The time being 7 p.m. on April 11th, 2022. Quorum of the planning board being present, call this meeting to order. We'll note for the record, Mr. Fowler is not in attendance this evening. We'll also welcome our new member, Mr. Duffy. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we'll get right into it. Just for anybody who's in the room, just a heads up. Agenda items E and G, the applicants have requested those to be postponed to our next meeting. That's 160, 170 River Road and 9496 Main Street. So we won't hear any testimony on that tonight. So if that's why you're here, you do not need to stick around. You will not miss anything. With that, we'll move to approval of minutes. I'm going to ask that we table the minutes because Mr. Ryder and I were absent last time. Mr. Fowler is absent this time, and Mr. Duffy's a new member, so we'll wait and vote on those at our next meeting. So yes. We'll just move that along.
Motion, Mr. Chairman?
No, because it's above the line.
Yep.
All right. Moving on to agenda item B, committee reports, administrative actions. Do any of the members have any committee reports they wish to make at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I don't really have a committee report, but Mr. Ryder set us up to view the school department building that's being built on Pleasant Street. And I got to tell you, we took a tour. I was there with Chairman Sullivan from the school committee, Bridget Garabedian from the school committee, and new member Mr. Russo from the school committee, and a phenomenal building. Tewksbury residents should be really happy with the building that's coming up on for the elementary school building on Pleasant Street. It's state of the art. The classrooms are huge, and they have spared no expense getting what we need in town for the students of Tewksbury. I got to tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. They're coming along pretty quick, and just a great building. I look forward to the completion of it. I believe it's the first of the year. And just for some information, I asked the contractor when they were planning on taking down the Center Street School, and they were, in a smart decision. They're going to wait to start tearing it down when the kids were on vacation, which is next week, I believe, or April vacation, so that it won't disturb any of the kids that are in school. So, but with that said, I'm pleasantly surprised with the building, and it looks great. So, thank you.
Mr. Ryder, anything to add?
No, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so we'll move next to board reorganization. So coming back out of the election, we'll do this all again.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Mr. Steve Johnson as chairman.
All right, we have a motion made.
Second.
We have a second. Motion made and seconded. Any other nominations?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, no, just for that one.
Just for that, no.
I'll do the rest.
No.
All right, hearing none, nominations are closed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries. All right, now take motions for vice chair.
I'll make a motion to recommend Mr. Fowler as vice chair.
All right, we have a motion
Second,
made.
Mr. Chair.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify. I'm sorry. Any other nominations? Hearing none, nomination closed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, all those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now the office of clerk. Do we have a nomination?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Mr. Jim Duffy as the new clerk.
All right, motion made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other nominations? Hearing none. Nomination closed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, that takes care of our offices. I'll let all the board members, we have the committee assignments. Everybody take a look at what they're on, if they're comfortable with. Obviously, Mr. Duffy, there's a few openings, including NIMCOG will be one, because I'm kind of holding that seat because we didn't have anybody. So take a look at that, and when we come back maybe next time, we'll deal with committee assignments. Does that work?
Right.
And also, Mr. Chair, typically the committee assignments expire June 30th, and the committees come up for reassignment anyway, so it might be something we deal with even a little bit further down the road.
Okay,
but
yeah, so
certainly something to
time.
start looking at. Yep.
So that'll take care of that. All right, moving on to agenda item B3, Town Planners Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep it short here. I was able to speak with Representative Robertson just 20 minutes ago about the proposed sidewalks in front of 1788 and 1866 Main Street, including the signal update at Livingston Street. And he said that we have two options to look at right now where we can earmark funding for this fiscal year, but also MassDOT has a greater plan for resurfacing the road and doing sidewalks through that area. So he's going to get me an update on when that project is set to take place, because we certainly wouldn't want to do a bunch of work that they end up having to undo. But
Okay.
I'm going to follow up with him on that. And then the only other item I wanted to discuss was at the last meeting, I had proposed an initiative to waive the signed special permit filing fees for the remainder of 2022. The idea behind that would be to encourage Main Street businesses, Andover Street businesses to maybe give their properties a bit of a facelift and kind of help them along the way. They would have to pay for their building permit fees and some other costs associated, but I thought this could be a nice way to make things a little bit easier for them.
Okay, yeah, I saw that. I think it's a good idea. The only thing I will caution, or at least from me, I don't want to speak for everybody, is that that doesn't mean we're opening the floodgates for electronic signs.
No.
Like, that's not the only thing we mean. We're talking about updated, cleaned up, what was the example? Was the
Max
one for-
Dairy.
Max Dairy.
Yep.
Just going from sort of that old's been around sign to a new and updated sign. We're not looking to start the light show going down Main Street just because we waived the fee. I don't think we would look very favorably upon a flood of those coming in. So I'll warn everyone now. But, you know, if it's something that might work, then feel free to give it a shot. But otherwise, we're really talking about cleanup, not creative. All right, so,
Chairman, I have a comment on that as well.
Yep.
I also agree that we need to help the businesses in town, and waiving the fee, I'm all in favor of that. But when I was working in the city of Boston, there was a program that they had, a storefront improvement program, that they offered low-interest loans. So if we could do something like that for the residents of Tewksbury, some of the businesses in town, coordinate with that with a local bank, that maybe they could help us in that joint venture, I think it'll be a win-win for Tewksbury if we could. But, you know, I mean, like I said, I'm all in favor of the waiving of the fees, because we need to help our businesses as much as we can, so.
so do the members feel comfortable doing that, or do you want,
Yeah,
are we all right with that right now, or do we?
sure, do we want to make a motion and,
All right, okay,
Okay.
I'll take a motion for it.
all right, I'll make a motion to approve the proposed initiative to waive signed special permit fees.
Do we want to
motion made?
set a timeframe
Well,
on that?
that,
So it's good, so at Mr. Lauder's recommendation, it'll go through the end of the year.
yes,
Gotcha, okay.
All right?
yes.
So we got a motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, so let's get something in the pipes, good.
Thank you,
All
Alex.
right, moving on to agenda item B4, Border Road non-substantial change determination. Do we have anybody here for Border Road? We do.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Jim Hanley, Civil Design Consultants. So we're in front of you tonight for a non-substantial change for Border Road. Probably recall, I think it was 2017 when we originally had the special permit for the OSRD subdivision. We've been out there building essentially since then. Just to kind of give you a sense as to where the project is, we basically have everything done right now except for the curbing and the final placement of the final course of pavement. During the process, over the last 12 months or so, the project owner, one of the abutters reached out to him and began to describe a property line dispute. So once we hear that, we go back through, we look at all the information that we have on our file, and try to walk through it in that way. To make a long story short, we feel very comfortable with the determination that we made with the original plan, that it complies or is consistent with the monumentation located out in the field as well as the record documents. But to make a dispute go away, and because we have the ability to do so and still comply with the underlying special permit regulations for the OSRD, we've been able to modify the plan so that the blue line on the presentation plan there is shifted approximately on average 10.5 feet, give or take, back toward our property, away from the abutter. And that still allows us to comply with the OSRD density, the open space requirements, the upland within the open space. So again, we feel really comfortable that what we did was appropriate and consistent with the requirements that we have. But to make a potential issue go away, this is the path of least resistance. So that's what we've done.
All right, very good. Mr. Ryder?
No, I'm all set. You answered my question. All set. Thank you.
Mr. Fratelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is Mr. Madden okay with what we're trying to do, Mr. Hanley?
Yes, so I'm working for the developer, Carl Krupe, and his attorney has worked out with Mr. Madden's attorney.
Okay.
And there's an agreement in principle for this change, and then we're obviously going to have to update those deeds and re-record things appropriately, because now there's a further clarification on the property line.
Sure, okay. That's all we want, as long as all parties are happy with the outcome, so I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Duffy?
No, I have no comment.
All right. The chair is satisfied as well. With that, is there a motion on of this being a non-substantial change first?
Make a motion?
All right, I have a motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now, as to the non-substantial change itself.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion approved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those
Aye.
opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, all set. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanley.
Moving on to agenda item B5, 300 Ames Pond, approval not required plan. Just state your names for the record, gentlemen. The floor is yours.
Jim Hanley, Civil Design Consultants.
Dick Cuco, Woodland Design. Mr. Chairman, the property that's at 300 Ames Pond Drive is currently zoned office research. There's some potential zoning changes coming down the road, which would make the property pretty much useless other than office research. So we're filing the perimeter plan in order to preserve the underlying zoning for a period of 3 years, so, which is a requirement under Chapter 48, Section 6. So, and at the same time, while we had it, it's a good idea. We're showing the outline of the wetlands to put that on record. So it has twofold purpose. Besides showing the perimeter of the property, it's delineating where the wetland resource area is, so that moving forward, if anybody looks at the property, they'll know that there's a large wetland area 3/4 of the way across the easterly side of the property.
All right, very good. Anything to add? Mr. Vitalia?
Yeah, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. I mean, you're only identifying the lines, correct, Mr. Cuco? And not changing anything else that's there, just
Nope.
protecting it in the event this doesn't pass in May. So I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Duffy?
I think I'm okay with the freeze as well.
Mr. Ryder?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think this has stirred up some comments and some questions about this, but I think what Mr. Cuco just explained, that what you're delineating here raises a good point, that the wetlands, the amount of wetlands on the parcel, but also what the lot lines as well. So I'm all set. Thank you.
All right, the chair is all set as well. Do we have a motion to endorse the A&R plan?
Yeah, I make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to endorse the A&R plan for 300 Ames Pond Drive as requested.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on to agenda item B6, 890 East Street and 1118 Lumber Lane, approval not required.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cuco?
Yes, Dick Cuco from Woodland Design. We have two existing parcels, Mr. Chairman, they're roughly 4.5 acres each. Mr. Phelan, who owned Lot 1 many years ago, and then he sold it, and he retained ownership to Lot 2. The property on Lot 1 is pretty much maxed out, and so there was about 7,000 square feet that they probably could never use down the road. So Mr. Phelan asked them if they would sell him 7,584 square feet. So basically, all we're doing is moving one small lot line. We're showing it as parcel A, but parcel A has to be consolidated with Lot 2, and it's not a separate building lot. So it's basically just a lot line relocation plan.
All right, also straightforward. Mr. Ryder?
I'm all set, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Duffy?
That's good with me.
Mr. Fratelli?
All set, Mr. Chairman.
The chair is all set as well. We have a motion on the endorsement of the approval not required plan.
So moved.
A motion made, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to agenda item B7, 2212 Main Street, preliminary subdivision plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yuko.
Hugo from Woodland Design. We have the a property that's situated at 2212 Main Street, not to be confused with 2122 Main Street, which is coming up later on the agenda. I actually thought I was at the end of the meeting, and I was starting to panic. But basically, this is the property that is where Maverick's restaurant is. It's between March Road and the new development that was just constructed up there. They're still working out some issues on some minor ownership issues on the property. They have some plans to move forward with it, but in order to preserve their rights under zoning, we did this last year. Zoning didn't go through, so we have our preliminary subdivision, which we may end up building if things don't go exactly 100% the way we'd like to go. But this case here, it's like less is more or more is less. So it is a viable plan that could be built out. And so we're here to see, basically, I'm not sure that there's any approval required other than that it has to be submitted and reviewed by the planning board. But if you had comments, we would welcome them.
We'll go around the room just in case. Mr. Duffy?
I have no comment.
Mr. Fratelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at the plan, Mr. Cuco, I always bring it up to potential developers that there are a lot of vacant offices in town still, so I make it aware to the developer that, listen, you know, if you come in with a plan, hopefully you come in with an occupant that's going to take that office space for the most part, because that's what a lot of them are vacant around town, but just to be aware of that fact and bring it to your attention. But that's all. I'm all set.
Thank you.
All right. Chair's all-
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'll echo what Mr. Fratelli has stated, that we hope that when a proposed development comes in, we do have a commercial component of this. We don't want to see any more empty storefronts. Thank you.
All right. Chair's all set. There's no official action, so it's just submitted and noted for the record, so just hold zoning.
It's in the minutes, that's all.
That's it.
All that's necessary, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cuco.
So before I move on to the public meeting items, just for anyone in the audience, I don't know, there seemed to be, there was a little bit of confusion maybe. The administrative actions that we do, they're not open to public comment. They're just the actions we take. We do it in a public meeting. The following hearings are the ones that allow for public comment. So if anybody was here for any of the previous items, the reason I didn't call for any comment was that, just so you know. And as far as any questions about the submittals for freezing zoning, it's the exact same thing that happened the last time at our meeting before the zoning article came up. Standard practice, if that's going to happen, and you have a piece of property and you want to take a chance that, you know, if it passes, you don't lose the current rights you have, you file these things with us. The A&Rs are approval not required, the name's right in it. If they submit it properly, we endorse it. It's not even an approval, it's just an endorsement. So for anybody who had any confusion about that, I know the office was getting a lot of calls, that there was some confusion about all of that. Nothing nefarious, it's just business is business as usual, all right? So that takes care of administrative actions. Moving on to agenda item C, zoning bylaw warrant article. Actually, I think it's just warrant articles, period.
Yes.
Because it covers more than just that, but that's included in it. All right, so do we have anyone here? We do. Are these, just for clarification, are these the real numbers this time? 29, 30, and 31, are they sticking? Do we know?
To my knowledge, yes.
Because I know sometimes we're not sure and we just approve them without the numbers, so I just
Yeah, I
wasn't sure.
think the.
Should we do it without the numbers?
No, I think it's okay because the
Yeah.
warrant was on the website, I believe.
All right, okay,
Yeah.
just to be sure. All right, gentlemen, once you get situated, if you just state your names for the record.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name's Todd Johnson. I am the chair of the zoning bylaw subcommittee and also a member of the select board.
Steve Sadwick, Assistant Town Manager.
All right, and just so everybody knows, Mr. Fowler and myself from this board also sit on the zoning bylaw subcommittee and have been part of this the whole way along. And Mr. Fowler's been part of it the entire way along. I came in this last, when we added a second member. So, the floor is yours, gentlemen.
Yep. So just quick overview for you. As you know, this is a much discussed and lengthy discussion that we've had for a number of years. It's involving, obviously, as you all appreciate, a very comprehensive bylaw. Affects many people, many issues that we have in the community. The existing bylaw, as you know, is now, I think, just over 20 years old. We've had numerous changes in its lifetime. And there was an effort that began approximately 5 years ago to bring the bylaw up to current standard. The motivation to do that was to make it a little more easy to use, to clarify some areas that over time had inconsistencies in the bylaw, and to allow for a little modernization, if you will, of the maps and things that are associated with it. So I won't go into all the details. I know Mr. Sadwick can speak to specifics, but as you know, this failed to pass at the last town meeting a year ago by 2 votes. We went back to the drawing board, if you will, and I believe that the process that the committee followed over the last year or so, close to a year, has actually had a positive impact on the process. I believe we've had more public input than maybe existed previously. We've addressed a number of concerns that were raised at the town meeting a year ago, among others that have been raised since. And in short, I believe that we now have something that the community hopefully can get behind. As you know, the planning board needs to take action on this because we were before town meeting a year ago. So we're here tonight to obviously respectfully ask for your support once again on what we believe is a very important update and improvement to the existing bylaw that we work with. And with that, I'll turn it to Mr. Sadwick for any of his comments.
Mr. Sadwick, just 1 second, because I was remiss in not mentioning that for the process being a little bit different this time. So under normal circumstances, for example, the article that'll be in front of us in a few minutes, the board usually just gives a recommendation, either adopt, postpone indefinitely, or no recommendation. No matter what we recommend, it will go to town meeting. That's the normal process. This is a little bit different. In order for this to go to town meeting, it actually has to get a favorable endorsement by a majority of the board in order to actually get to town meeting. So it's a little bit different this time. So there's a little more weight in what we do than normal. But just so everybody's aware of how that works. Mr. Sadwick?
Okay, thank you. As far as presentation material, there, with the exception of Mr. Duffy, all the board members were present for the public hearing last year when we brought the article forward. There were, the committee, interestingly, met, I think, 10 times from September until February and closed out in February. So it was a very quick period of time that we went through a number of different items within the article. And there were 14 different areas that were covered, and I'm pretty sure that Alex and I, when we were discussing this, that the summary of revisions in the 2022 zoning bylaw article compared to the 2021 article was given to the board. So it discusses things such as the fee in lieu of affordable units. There was an agreement on the committee that fee in lieu of units would be mandatory for multifamily projects. And when it came to those open space residential developments, the units had to be provided on site unless the town was at 10% of our affordable requirements for 40Bs. And at that point, the board could, at their discretion, accept a fee in lieu of the affordable units. So that was kind of a compromise position. You had to be, the town has to be at 10% before there's any discussion of a fee in lieu of, period. There were changes to Appendix A, which was the table of use changes. Multifamily was allowed in the office research district in the previous article. The committee decided to remove that, so multifamily is not allowed at all in the office research district. And then the committee added self-storage facilities in the office research district by a special permit. The committee also brought forward allowing pre-owned green vehicle sales by a planning board special permit in the general business district. So those are the first two major areas of changes. The second area, or the third area, was in billboards, which the article last year was a change from what we currently have today. And so the committee decided, let's keep what we have in the existing bylaw because there was concern that came up at town meeting and during the public input sessions. Then there were some other technical things that were brought up for open space residential design calculations. Sidewalks had to be set forth to standards by Department of Public Works. Landscaping requirements included native plantings and shrubbery and the use of pollinators. There was a screening maintenance requirement that was added, that plantings that are installed to serve as a screening buffer according to an approved site plan shall be maintained as a screening buffer by the owner in perpetuity. There were some minor changes to the way that the definitions occurred in Appendix A. Then there were some definitional changes themselves, such as building height, grade plane. We added in gross floor area. Green motor vehicles was something that was added in, as well as steel storage units. Story was rewritten, as well as story above grade plane. And then there were some additions regarding bicycles. Family suite changes occurred. Accessory building height, again, getting back to the height definition that was made. There were some changes for parking to kind of pick up some of the issues that we found with these mixed-use developments that have the smaller size spaces. And then fences, the building code is now 7 feet for fences, so our current zoning bylaw is not really in compliance with the building code. So this draft article now has what's required in the building code. And then the medical marijuana overlay district components were incorporated into the marijuana establishment section and were allowed in the general business district by special permit, which pretty much covers the overlay district as it stands today, but kind of takes that up to the Lowell border for medical marijuana dispensaries. So that's the changes that the committee came up with. Everything else in the document, pretty much it did stay as is.
So then just two things to note, if you would, if I'm not wrong, but several of those changes you just listed were also at the suggestion of the building inspectors so that they'd be consistent with the building codes, so we'd lack that sort of difference. So, they weren't made for no reason, that were actually made by the building inspector asking to add that consistency in so they'll match up. So that takes care of
Correct.
several of those.
Right.
And then the only other one, because you mentioned the marijuana at the end, was, just so we have it on the record again, it was the intention of the subcommittee to look at the retail sale.
Correct.
But we decided that because it's both a zoning and a regular town bylaw issue, that it would be better to postpone. That way the Board of Selectmen and all of that can all be done at one time at a future town meeting, maybe October. That way no one has any questions of, well, why didn't you do it then? We did it out of an abundance of caution to make sure that everything got done right one time and not piecemeal. So it wasn't left out on purpose for any other reason than that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on that point. And the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Chairman, is working on that with the town administration relative to the, the procedural side of the house. So hopefully by the fall, we'll be able to bring the retail marijuana question before voters, and it would be a two-part process, right? It'd be a general bylaw-related topic, and then obviously potentially a change to the zoning to allow for that.
Perfect.
And the subcommittee, as you said, just to be clear again, was in full support of that change, but out of an abundance of caution, didn't want to have half the house in order and the other half not.
Perfect. Excellent. So we got that in the record, and we're good to go from there. Mr. Ryder, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Sadwick, I know one area of concern has been, come up numerous times, the office research. Can you explain that a little more in depth for the individual that's, to understand what they're voting for at town meeting, what's current versus what's going to change if this passes? What can go there now, who can approve it, versus what will change if this does pass, please?
Yes.
I know
So-
this is a,
No, so I actually had a table done up that showed the differences between the two, which I didn't bring. So I'm going to do this by memory.
I'm sure you know it well.
And we'll see where that
See
goes.
it into your mind.
I'm sure you do.
So the biggest change, again, number one, when we get to single-family dwelling detached, currently is allowed in the office research district.
single family, correct?
Single family, and this does sound kind of strange because we keep holding the office research as being a commercially zoned district. And going through the history of this, here we go. Originally, the office research district was a heavy industrial district. And at one point, the zoning subcommittee, this planning board zoning subcommittee, looked at this and said, you know what, we have heavy industrial areas in town and commercial areas in town that don't allow single-family housing, but yet there's single-family housing in it. The best examples being the Woburn Street area was zoned heavy industrial, and we all know that there's, a pretty vibrant residential neighborhood in there. Then there were also areas along Route 38 that had single-family homes on it. So the planning board decided back then that they would allow for single-family housing in those two districts. And you fast forward a couple of years, and then the planning board brought forward the office research district to comply with what was in the master plan, and that was just one of the uses that remained that we probably could have and should have netted it out at that point in time, but just didn't. And so that sits in there today. And that's one of those uses that, an A&R would kind of protect you for 3 years. If you had submitted an A&R in the office research district, you would be able to do single-family housing. The new zoning bylaw would not allow it because we're trying to keep the office research to a commercial type use. So that's the big one. Like I said, multifamily was stripped out of this, which was in the last draft, the article that failed at town meeting. It's not allowed in the current, but I just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
And then pretty much most of the other uses, there are some things that were new definitions and uses that we've added. Congregate residence, assisted living, continuing care, retirement communities. Those are new uses that are being introduced into the Office Research District. It's basically senior housing, really, is what it comes down to. But those are added in, and nursing homes added in, adult daycare and/or respite care services, planning board special permits for all of those, and I think that covers it. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that, helped understanding the audience. There's, a significant group of abutters that are here that are or will be impacted if this doesn't change.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Sauer, just one to add to Mr. Ryder's area that he was just questioning. Within that, the things that are allowed, almost all of them, without it in front of me, require a special permit. Nothing is a by right.
Correct.
You could just do it. You're going to have to come in and ask. You don't just get to go ahead with any of those.
None of the new uses. There are some that had to remain, some that were carryovers from the existing bylaw that are by right uses. And it just so happens that the way zoning statutes are written, we have to have some by right uses in each one of our districts. Otherwise,
But those new ones, just to ease
those
anybody.
new ones are all planning board special
They all have to come in
permits.
before they can go forward with any
Yep.
of those. Okay, all right. Mr. Ryder, do you have any others?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Fattalia?
Just a couple comments, Mr. Chairman. And I think maybe I should direct it to Mr. Sadwick and Alex as well. On the on this family suites, have we ever done any review of the family suite after it gets approved by us? It's supposed to be a annual recertification of those. Do we do them anymore, Mr. Sadwick? Do you know, or just curious?
Those are annual recertifications that are responsibility of the homeowners. I don't know if they've been submitted to the planning or to the building department, though.
Okay. I mean, we approve them pretty regularly, but I just don't know how, after all the time that goes by, whether they're still being occupied by a family member, with people dying and so forth, I mean, what happens to those units? And usually the annual recertification would be, something that gets done, and so it doesn't get problems down the road, that's all.
Yeah, I'd have to check with the building department.
Okay.
And that's kind of a carryover from the current bylaw as it is.
Okay. Another question I have was Article 5 about the sidewalks. Now, the DPW is going to be establishing the sidewalk fee, correct?
Yeah.
That's always been a contentious amount between the developers and
Right.
us and so forth.
Right, so let me explain that a little bit too, because again, when the current bylaw was written and we put in sidewalks shall be constructed in commercial districts, actually it says sidewalks should be constructed in non-residential facilities. So the thought was along Route 38 that sidewalks would be part of the build-out. And we had in there accordance with planning board subdivision rules and regulations. Now the thought back when that was put in was that it would be for the physical specifications to the sidewalk, not the waiverability that's in the subdivision rules and regulations.
Right.
So when we talked about this at the committee level, the realization was, yes, we still want to have sidewalks put in by these commercial entities when they're building out their sites, and that it should be to DPW standards, but you still have your waiverability under subdivision rules and regulations because that's a different animal and it's controlled by different state laws. So there's things that you can waive under the subdivision control law, but in zoning, you wouldn't have that ability anymore. This would all be DPW specifications for sidewalks.
Okay. So they'll be giving us a fee with the application for people looking to put sidewalks in, correct?
Who would be giving us the fee?
Well, there's always been a question of what the fee would be in case they want to waive the sidewalk fee. Sidewalks.
But for these,
Yes.
it does away with that, right?
Well, no, it says it may be determined that a predetermined fee for use of the public way may be more advantageous to the town at the time of permitting. And then, yes, we would know at that point in time.
Okay.
It would be a known as they're going through the permitting
Well,
process.
that's what I'm
Yes.
glad it's there, so that when they come to us, we're not bickering back and forth
Right.
between developers and us as far as what the fee is gonna be, and, because they're always coming in looking for different prices compared to what they can get done by them or versus us so far. So, and just my last comment, Mr. Sadwick, did we put anything in there as far as visitor parking in the parking changes? Because that came up on East Street, if you recall, and I mean, there's the fine line there as far
Yeah,
as.
so the parking changes, and this again was the building commissioner's suggestion, where we were seeing, you mentioned East Street, I think that was 30 East Street, where they're, right. So in that instance, that was a good example of where they were putting in the minimum size,
Yeah.
and they were not including employee and visitor parking. So we have made an attempt to correct that in this bylaw now.
Good, that's all. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Duffy?
Yeah, I have no questions.
All right. So I sat on all this, so I don't have questions. I guess I have comments. And the only thing is, this has gone on a long time. I was on board with the last version. I can only say I'm more on board with this version. It definitely addresses some of the concerns that folks had at the last town meeting. I'll say the same thing I said before. This is incredibly complex. It's incredibly interwoven. And a lot of time has been put into doing this and hopefully doing it correctly. And I can only ask that people refrain, if they can, from trying to pick this apart at town meeting. It's really not a good place for it, for this kind of thing. There's too many things that attach to other things. We're gonna end up in the same problem as last time, and you're gonna take what might be a very good product and lead us in a path where we end up not passing it again. And I know a lot of the things that people complained about that they wanted gone would have been gone if we had passed this last time. Instead, it allowed all those things to continue happening over the past year because we didn't pass it. You do that again, that's what happens again. You put all those rules back into place that you might not like. I don't think that's going to be a good idea. I think this is something we need to do. It's at a place where it should make everybody pretty happy, I think, at this point, that it's addressing things. So I hope that town meeting will approve it, provided it gets there in a minute. But you know, I think that it's an extremely good product at this point. It's certainly taken its time getting created, so I think all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. So I hope everybody feels that way. And with that, I will open it up to the public for any questions, comments, or concerns on this article. This is Article 29. Just for anybody who doesn't understand, the map is its own article. It's really a technicality more than anything else, but. And if you come up to the microphone, just give your name and your address, and then the floor will be yours.
Bob O'Brien, Cardigan Road. Thank you for your time. I noticed one of the larger intents of the
Mr.
bylaw.
O'Brien, just pull the mic a little bit to you, because I think we're
Sure.
losing your voice.
Better?
Perfect.
Okay. One of the main intents of the bylaw rewrite is to have consistency within our bylaws. Mr. Johnson even talked about consistency in a couple of his comments tonight. I have to go back a little bit to the A&R that was previously approved. I know that you folks have no control of the A&R, but you can reject it. You don't have to accept it as easily and receptively as you did. The other comment I want to make is Mr. Ryder mentioned about OR. It has been a lot of attention throughout the town. And I'm not sure the question that he asked about the details of OR, and most of the people here right now are concerned about OR, is was adequately described, defined. I mean, I think the OR is one that's bringing the audience level where it is, and I'm not sure it was described with all the changes that should have been. No disrespect, Mr. Sedgwick, but I don't think it was described as well. As you said, it's very complicated, it's very interwoven, and I don't think the amount of response that was given qualifies for the amount of details in OR. One other question regarding the bylaws is why was not the A&R, which has got a lot of attention since last Wednesday, why wasn't that brought up in the bylaws? The A&R is a zoning question. It's a zoning approval.
No, it's not, Bob. It's not.
It's
A&R,
First of all, you're also calling it an approval again. It's an endorsement. It's not an approval. So
Okay.
you got to use your terms right, or you're going to confuse people even more. We didn't approve it. We endorsed it. So again, but you do that. You get up here and you say stuff, and you say it the way
Wrong
you
word.
want to say
Okay,
it.
fine.
And
I'll bring my...
He's obviously had conversation with you before about this, so we want to make sure we're saying accurate
Wrong word,
things.
fine. Endorse versus approve. Thank you. But I just question that when a zone is frozen, as you guys endorsed, it is a zoning issue. That's my consensus. And I think, if it's a zoning thing, it should include ZBA activity. I know it's a state mandate, but I think we don't address it in detail as much as we should.
So,
Mr. Sauer?
yeah, so unfortunately, the way the state statutes are written is that a tool under the subdivision control law is used in zoning for freezes. But zoning has no control over those freezes whatsoever, and nor do local zoning bylaws. They don't.
Okay,
Mr. Ryder?
May I,
Pull your mic down.
Mr. O'Brien, thank you, Mr. O'Brien. I just want to make sure, and that's why I asked that question specifically, so people understand. And I'm glad you stood up to try and get a better understanding. Is there something specific that is a point of concern? Because I think we can sit here all night. I don't have a problem with that. I just want to make sure that
not
everyone's comfortable.
necessarily for me,
Okay, and that's fine. I just want to make sure everyone's
but I'm
comfortable.
talking about
What's,
others, the viewing audience,
Sure.
and the people that might have ideas or thoughts at town hall. And like I've said before, with the bylaw committee process, the question should be asked at this level and not at the town meeting level. And that's all. I have a good understanding of it. Probably is not as well as you folks do, but no one has all the answers to the bylaws right now either. One other question was the A&R, if I may. Does the A&R that was endorsed have the specifics on it that the representative or the applicant stated about wetland delineation? Does it clearly say on the A&R that you folks endorsed, does it clearly specify the same information that the gentleman here gave earlier?
The version we have and the Mylar that's here.
Right.
But you're getting off topic. If you want to talk about A&Rs for some reason during zoning, as they pertain to the zoning bylaw, where they aren't, you can do that. But you're now asking about something I told you we weren't doing public comment on, and you're trying to jam it in here during a discussion of the zoning bylaw.
It's a
Well,
public
I guess
meeting.
what I'm asking is, what would be the point of whether or not that is or isn't on the plan relative to the zoning bylaw? Nothing. In general, if you want to ask if something is on a plan in an A&R, sure, I suppose you could ask that question. But you're asking a specific question about something that was not open for public comment in order to try and do it here during the public comment on zoning. You don't like what happened. That doesn't make it wrong. So I'm not having a conversation about the A&R that was earlier. Stick to the zoning, because that's what we're discussing right now.
Got it. Just want to raise the issue.
I know you do, but you're trying to do it in a place you weren't supposed to, and you've had multiple conversations with the office about this where they explained it to you. But you're not happy with the answer you got, so now you're trying to jam it in during the zoning discussion.
All right.
It's not fair to everybody that we have to try to explain away something that's been explained in a place it doesn't belong. So stick to the zoning article.
Okay, with the zoning article, are there any height changes made within the zoning? Height changes of the buildings in OR?
No. No.
So it's still 2.5 stories?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's no changes in the bylaw with the number of units? Now, is a condo unit considered single-family housing, or is that considered multifamily, a condo with 4 units and then 3 units, 2 units?
You know, under the current bylaw, I don't think it would apply. Going forward in the new bylaw, though, single family is not allowed and wouldn't be allowed in the office research district. But I don't think I don't think we would classify that condos as a single family development.
Maybe clarify your question, because are you asking under current or the future?
I'm talking about the new one, the future bylaw.
To Mr. Savas, is that it removes single family, so if it's removed, it wouldn't matter. Like what classification?
They're removing multifamily.
Single family and multifamily are both removed from the district. So neither of those are allowed.
Okay.
So how many units?
So single family's being removed?
That's the biggest thing. That's what he just went through during the presentation.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I think that, I don't want to go back to the A&R, but the new guidelines, the new zoning will not allow single-family or multifamily. The reason it was done prior under the state statute was because the zoning is changing. So if the zoning fails at town meeting, it goes back, the parcel owner can come back and do whatever it may, at the time, fall within the guidelines. The reason under the state law allowed that, he did that tonight, because the new zoning guidelines are going to change that will no longer allow a multifamily home there or a single-family home there. So, and that's why I wanted to try and clarify those things to make everyone understand
With
what's
the
going on.
endorsement of the zone freeze, they can be allowed.
Absolutely. They'll be allowed single-family under the current A&R.
Okay.
So, but the multifamily is going away, and the single-family will go away, providing the zoning changes.
Okay. And under the prevailing zone with the zoning freeze, is a condo considered a single family or a multifamily unit? And what would the height?
Yeah, a condo would be considered multifamily. And we had this conversation before because, again, there are single-family condominium units on Route 38. This was built out up by Colonial Drive. I think it's Serena Way has single-family condo homes. The property is owned by a condominium association. It's not a fee simple because those homes are part of a condominium association, but they're standalone single-family homes.
Okay. So there could be a single standalone unit that is allowed, which is okay by me.
Under the existing, correct.
Under the existing, but will not be allowed if the new zoning passes.
But you're talking about the way it's owned versus what it looks like. Because if you're thinking in terms of big condo, no.
Right.
But just think of it in terms of the way it's operated versus the way it looks. Is that fair?
Correct, right.
So single family is single family in terms of structures.
Right.
But the ownership of how they operate the place could be condoized to handle how they deal with it, as opposed to what you might think of as one house, one deed, that kind of thing. But visually, think of it, one house.
That's why I brought about the element of the height.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So just, before you walk away, just, on the office research, you didn't have a specific question yourself that you wanted clarified beyond the one we just did on the single family, correct?
And the height. The
And the
height. The
But
height.
otherwise, you're good?
I'm good.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. The only reason I asked that was because, and Ms. Sag will make the point, is we can get lost in the weeds here if he tries to explain this too much, because then it just becomes a lot of words, and that's why I want to try to stick to specific questions anyone has to try and clarify, that's all. Sir?
Hi, I'm Robert Wald. I live at 97 Cardigan Road.
Excellent. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. In addition to height, one of the concerns I have is where the height is measured from. And I'd like to know what that is in the old and the new bylaw.
Mr. Sadler?
So under the new,
That was in here, right? Wasn't that in here tonight?
okay. So under the new, it is the vertical distance from grade plane to the average height of the highest roof surface. Not included are spires, cupolas, antenna, similar parts of structures which do not enclose potentially habitable floor space. So that's under the new. And then under the existing, it is yeah, there it is. Okay. Under the new, under the existing, it's the height of a building shall be the vertical distance from the grade plane to the highest point of the roof. Not included are spires, cupolas, antennas, similar parts of the structures. So the difference is building height is the highest point to the highest, from grade to the highest point of the roof, whereas in the proposed, it's from the average height of the highest roof surface, which I believe was in compliance with the building code, if I remember correctly.
That was one of the ones that the building inspector had suggested as the way to do it, because it'll be most consistent to how the building code is run as well. So that'll make our zoning bylaw and the building code consistent with each other. Make his job easier as well.
And I'm sort of got lost in the back and forth there, but the one in the new building code would be based on the average height?
Correct.
And in both cases, they're measured from the plane.
Grade plane.
The grade plane. And if you have multiple levels to the grade plane, what happens?
So again, the grade plane is out of the building code, which is a reference plane representing the average finished ground level of adjoining the building at exterior walls. Where the finished ground level slopes away from the exterior walls, the reference plane shall be established by the lowest points within the area between the building and the lot line, or where the lot line is more than 6 feet from the building, between the building and a point 6 feet from the building. So that, again, that's straight out of the building code, the way that it's measured.
So visually, if we're talking, so you're talking about you're gonna go out 6 feet. If it drops way off after that, we're not counting the drop. It stops at 6 feet. So if it slopes a little bit for 6 feet, you're going from here. After the 6 feet, it doesn't matter how far it drops. You're not gonna use that measurement. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And I have a quick A&R question, which is, if you didn't endorse it, what would happen?
Mr. Sadler?
So if the board didn't endorse an A&R plan, then the town clerk would have to certify that it was not endorsed, and then they would be able to take it to the registry and record it as a plan that was an approval not required plan that was not, action was not taken by the planning board.
And how would that have changed?
It wouldn't have changed the outcome at all.
So when we say it's not, an approval not required, it's what it means.
really
They're
not
gonna get it
required.
done anyways. It's just cleaner when we do it with the endorsement for filing purposes. You're just changing the steps. They can do it with us, or, you know, if for some reason the board was just being unreasonable, even though they provided what was necessary, they're simply gonna go upstairs to the clerk's office and do the whole thing anyways. So this is what we're trying to get at when we're saying, it, you know, this is not something that we're gonna address in the zoning bylaw to somehow change that. They would have froze zoning, they just would have done it a different way through the clerk's office. So what happened here tonight wasn't something that, if we said no, was just gonna stop it. So that's what we're trying to get at when we're clarifying these things, so people don't get confused as to what's going on in here. Okay?
Okay, that's good, thank you.
You snuck one in.
It was a short one.
I know. I gave Mr. O'Brien a little bit, and then I gave him a hard time, so I let you sneak one in.
Joan Unger, 160 Cardigan Road. And I just still am not clear on what can happen over in the Ames Pond office research. I'm still confused. Right now, there could be single family, but not multifamily. Does that mean condos? Condos are considered multifamily?
Well,
So
yes, condos normally, again, we're going back to how you're managing it versus how it looks. In your mind, you're thinking single-family homes. Even if they were being run as a condo, they'd still need to be single-family homes to comply with the zoning that exists now. Okay? So don't think those condo buildings that go way up and have tons of units inside themselves. You'd be talking about standalones. They'd look like single-family homes to you, or me, or anybody else.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and Mr. Sadler can correct me if I'm wrong, the idea of multifamily is that you're putting more than one unit on a buildable lot, really. So, you know, right now we have 1 acre zoning. So if you have more than one unit on that 1 acre, it would be considered multifamily, because that's what our zoning is right now. So, you know, like Mr. Johnson said, the mechanism, whether it's a condo association, almost doesn't matter, because if you're talking about the Ames Pond property specifically, that's 30 acres. They could do 30 standalone condos or single-family condos or whatever you want to call them, but still put themselves in a condo association. So when we're talking about multifamily, we really mean more than one unit on a zoning compliant buildable lot.
So think,
But
you said 30,
I
so
still
30.
don't, I understand, because I still don't understand that is that a technicality? Can it still become a
So
condo?
let me see if I can do it as a quick and dirty.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can do this. So as of right now, we came up with 30? Okay, as of right now, 30 single homes could be built there.
Right.
Okay? For the next 3 years, the current property owner is frozen the zoning that way. So over the next 3 years, for your mind's purposes, I guess, think that the zoning stays like it is right now, as far as that single-family home part. So for the next 3 years, 30 single-family homes could be built there, okay? For 3 years, until that runs out. Under the new zoning, which once that runs out, or however it kicks in, once the new zoning kicks in, that option would go away, except for that 3-year period that was frozen. So in 4 years, say, no single-family homes anymore, after 3 years. All right, so think of it that way.
But remember, I'm still thinking about condos.
Well, no condos. No condos like you're thinking. Single-family homes. Just, well, we shouldn't use the word condo anymore because we're talking about a different
We're
kind of
never
thing.
going to think about
No
condos.
multifamily now,
Yeah.
that didn't get frozen. They don't have the ability to do multifamily there, okay? Now or in the future. That's under this zoning or the future zoning. No multifamily. So put that out of your mind as a worry, if that's what you're
Yeah, it
concerned
is a
with.
worry. And-
Fair
yeah.
enough. So no multifamily.
Okay.
Single family maxed out at the number we think was like 30. 30 single standalone buildings
Only
of
for the
single
next 3
home
years.
family places is the max that you can do now. and the max that they'll be able to do for 3 years, with it frozen, if the new zoning bylaw passes, that's getting rid of single family, that's getting rid of multifamily. Well, actually, not getting rid of it, it just doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
So on that property, after the freeze is gone, no single families, no multifamilies.
All right, so my other question is, so office buildings are allowed. What is the height? I don't know, maybe that was asked and I didn't understand the answer, but is there a height limit on the office buildings?
Yeah, Mr. Sadler, height limit?
There is.
I'm going to give, I want to make sure I give it exactly out of the bylaw. Should probably tabulated one. So in the proposed, in this article, the height in the office research district for commercial buildings is 60 feet. And I'll go back to what's allowed in the current. The current allows for 35 feet, but then it refers you to section 6300 in the current bylaw. So now we have to track that down. And so in section 6300, the planning board may waive the height, may waive the heavy industrial dimensional requirements in the office district upon granting a special permit subject to the findings of special permit. So in that regard, because the dimensional requirements are what height falls under, the planning board would have the ability to waive the height in the office research district. So it would be 50 feet. And what's proposed is 60 feet with the change in the building height, grade plane and everything else. So that's the difference.
So that's a recommendation from the people who put this together?
Yep.
Okay. And then, I'm sure I know the answer to this, but 40B can always move in and put condos or whatever.
Well, not really. So just so you understand, at this moment, we are still working under the census from the previous 10 years, which we met the 10%. So we're still technically at 10% until the new census numbers become official, at which point we would no longer be, at which point a 40B is a possibility.
We don't have control.
Up until you get to 10% again, at which point what I would refer to, and I think most people would think of, as a forced 40B would not be allowed. Because you can still do lip 40Bs, that's just a local initiative petition, which means most people refer to it as a friendly 40B. A little more cooperative, you know, that kind of thing. Those can be done at the leisure of the Board of Selectmen, pretty much. But yeah, so that's how that works. So right now, we're still, no one could force a 40B on us right now.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, my last question.
Mr. Ryder, I think, was going to comment on what you...
I just want to bring up that is why Article 1 is being changed. So if we're under Article 1, number 1, 8.3.4, basically, if we are below the 10%, we will no longer be able to take the fee in lieu of. So
Good, yeah.
if that, so we're trying to, eliminate that situation. So we're trying to work towards maintaining our 10% at all times, understanding the new census based upon the population in town is going to change. So this is going to help us to continue to work towards staying at that 10%.
Well, Mr. Ryder, I thought that, again, I must have misunderstood. I thought we voted on that at town meeting, not to do the fee in lieu of anymore. Am I wrong about that?
No, that was
correct.
That was part of the last zoning that we tried to get in there, but that did not pass with the last zoning change.
Yeah.
So
that's not, that doesn't exist. That
no,
doesn't-
so there are, as Mr. Johnson stated, there are a lot of components to this zoning article that will help us to maintain our affordable housing population or numbers to eliminate that forced 40B. Not to say that the town may not go a friendly 40B but that also, if there's a friendly 40B, that helps us to maintain that 10%. So then we don't have that unfriendly or forced 40B put on the town. So this is a method that we can work towards to maintain those numbers of affordable units without taking a fee in lieu of to get us to that point.
I thank you for explaining that. And then I have one other question that I'll be laying awake tonight wondering, what is the difference between an endorsement and an approval? I really don't know.
Mr. Sadwick?
That's a really good question.
Really, the way, I don't know how you'd explain it, but basically, when we're approving something, I take it that we're making a decision.
Yeah.
Correct.
When we're endorsing something, we're really just deciding, did it meet the requirements that were put forth for it? If it did, then we endorse it. It's I don't know, there are a couple of things we do that are sort of like that, but not many. But an approval, to me, is when we are making a decision on something that's in front of us.
And an approval, most approvals before the planning board is a appealable approval.
Right.
So
That's true,
it's appealable by both the butters, it's appealable by the applicant themselves with an A&R. And the thing is it's an approval not required. The long title of it is approval not required under subdivision control law. So that's really what the planning board is doing, is they're looking at a plan. There's criteria in the state's subdivision control law that says if it meets these 3 criteria, then a subdivision is required. The plans that are being brought in are not plans that require subdivision. So they're saying approval is not required under subdivision control law, and they're endorsing the plan so that it could be recorded for other purposes. A lot of times these types of plans come in when lot lines are being reconfigured, which was an example of one that occurred here tonight over on Border Road.
Last week, too. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your information.
See, I liked how she snuck it in better. All right, anybody else?
Yep.
You're up next.
Thank you. Jessica Randolph, 1484 Andover Street. I have a question, which I'm really not entirely sure how it fits in here, but a concern about setback and multifamily. Will this new zoning not allow the kind of development at the corner of North Street and 133, the townhouses that are 3-story? They seem to have hardly any setback from the road. I don't know what's planned for greenery there. They're 3-story, and I believe they have an advertising sign of 509.
Right. So for part of your question, I would say you can go to the Community Development Office and you can take a look at the submitted plans they have,
Okay.
which would include landscaping.
Thank you.
So, and then bringing it back to zoning, again, Mr. Sadwick can give you the differences between the old and the new. I tried to stretch. I know.
Yeah, thanks.
I think of it sort of as it was grandfathered in.
Can I?
Mr. Ryder.
Yeah, thank you. That development, you know, I drive that road probably 15 times a day. And I will tell you, what could have been on that parcel could have been far worse than what is there. You know, I commend the board. We had many meetings with the applicant of the reduction of number of units, landscaping, sidewalks, a bus stop, the type of siding that was going on the homes, the way we oriented the properties.
Remove the commercial?
Correct. Whether they originally came in, they wanted a row house, to speak. 2 row houses, both directions. We worked with them to break them up, set them back, offset. So that could have been a lot worse.
And it took a year.
It did. So
we went through it with them.
No, I know you're looking at it now, you're seeing it's still in construction, but the plans, the landscape design plan, they worked on that in many meetings and back and forth, and it turned out, it will be a nice product when all's said and done. So.
Sadwick, did we stretch long enough for you?
Yeah, thanks. It's.
I tried, Steve.
No, I appreciate it. And again, Jessica, I think you can appreciate it, like the way that the current bylaw is structured is different than the new one, so to find the answer on the differences. The way that was permitted was that there was an overlay district there, which, again, this new zoning article is getting rid of overlays, so we don't have this dual system of zoning for parcels. And in that, the community village overlay district, it allowed for significant waivers on any of the setback requirements. The new zoning, if it were enacted, would require 25 feet minimum setback as far as frontage is concerned. So I think it actually works for the planning board and for the community's benefit that not having the flexibility that shows up in the current zoning bylaw works to benefit. What this overlay district would allow, the overlay district that it was approved for, allows for a 20-foot front yard setback, but then goes on to say that that can be waived. So the new bylaw is saying it's 25 feet and there's no waivers without going to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, thank you. And
Just one second, 'cause I see Mrs. Lowry raising her hand. Is there a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also wanted to add that currently, under the Community Village Overlay District, there are no caps on density, and this new bylaw would cap it at 7 per acre. So to answer your question in a more direct way, that development would look the same.
Right, thank you, that
Before you get
answers.
to your next question, too, I'd like to point out, and I don't know if everybody caught it just now, look at how long it took Mr. Sadwick to figure out the answer to what seems like a fairly straightforward question between the old bylaw and the new version. The new version, he can pretty much reference in about 2 seconds. The amount of sections he has to cross-reference to try and get you the answer you need is an exact example of why the new bylaw is so important, because what that just did to the person who probably knows this better than anybody in this room, in order for him to find that answer, is why there is a problem with the one we currently work under. Not to mention changes made just in general, just the ability to find that answer. So, floor is back to you.
I appreciate your explanation about the limit of the 7 units. The content to me is the most meaningful part. And if, you know, when you say you go up and down the road 15 times, I go up during commuter time, and I'm sure the coffee shop's very popular, the drive-in coffee shop, but someone's going to get whacked turning left there, just an FYI. So I don't know what can be done about, you know, I hope the traffic holds up well with that. Thank you very much for answering my questions.
Thank you.
All right, who's next? He beat you to it, but I know you're on the other side of the room, so I'll let you go next. You got the longest walk. Oh, you know what? I'm tempted now. I might have to switch. No, I'm gonna.
Good evening. RJ Shilley, 90 Cardigan Road. I think I have just a quick procedural question. I'm not sure if this is the right forum. I'll give it a shot. If I'm out of order, you can go tell me to stand.
All right.
And maybe it's for Mr. Sedgwick, I don't know. But so from a procedural perspective, if the current zoning bylaw article does not pass in the May town meeting, what does that mean for the current article?
Okay. So if the new proposed zoning bylaw does not pass, as like last time, we go back to the old rules. So for an example, the one that the lady just went through with the project up at the end of North Street and 133. All the ways in which that project went forward can happen again, because the limits that are placed in the new zoning bylaw will not take effect. So when the developers or the petitioners come in, those are the rules they're working under. We go back to the one that is pretty much the one with the things in it that bothers everyone by not passing the new zoning bylaw, which is what happened a year ago.
Right. I guess my question is more for what happens to the effort to trying to change the current zoning bylaws.
Well, I don't know
Does
about
this
the
get-
other members of the zoning bylaw
Right, you guys have had your fill, I
I'm
know
not sure
that.
I'm ready for another year of trying.
Right.
I'll put it that way.
So I guess procedurally, it's a question I have, like legally, what happens with that article? And then I guess it's another question, right, for the town. What,
Okay, maybe I understand the question better.
So I'll try to address it, but town meeting has the final word, as they do in all the matters that go before them. It's a 2/3 vote, and if town meeting defeats this article, then we will continue to operate under the current rules that are in existence. As a member of the committee and as a select board member, I can tell you that if we have taken 2 cracks at the plate here over 2 consecutive years, we've invested 5 years of time. We've spent thousands of dollars with consultants, hundreds of meetings, public input sessions, emails, etc. And the one thing I can tell you through the whole process is that I have yet to run into a person who says the current bylaw is the way to go. Everyone agrees that the current bylaw is flawed in very many ways and needs to be updated. We're driving a 20-year-old vehicle. It needs brakes and tires and a new battery and muffler, and we're making do with what we have. And I don't see that we will go back to the well if this does not pass.
So I think then the rest of the technical thing you're asking about, so you heard me say at the beginning of this that by bringing this back, the limit for how long it should have taken before this should have come back should have been 2 years. So we're jumping the line here, and the reason that we have to actually give a positive endorsement is the only way this can come back within a year.
Right.
Otherwise, it should have sat out for 2 years. If this does not pass, I would suggest, or it's probably going to wait at least 2 years before something comes forward again.
And Mr. Johnson, just to add to that further is we came back and over the last year, we've made additional changes, right? And those changes, I think, in the eyes of the committee that worked on it, were very positive and additive to the process from the public, for the most part. So we heard what was said, we took more input, and what we present now is that additional improvement, if you will, to 12 months ago.
And I think to build on that, there's a lot more compromise to some of the areas than there have been previously. And I think that should mean a lot to folks. That, you know, some of the people who fought the hardest about certain things, myself included, were definitely interested in, compromising on a lot of things to get this right, this crack, this bite at the apple. So I can't stress enough how much I hope this moves forward in May.
I don't disagree that there's a need for this. I will say, so I think I spoke at one of the zoning bylaw committee meetings, whenever that was, and I did make the comment that, and I think with Mr. Sadwick, you made the comment, Mr. Johnson, that, he's the expert, he knows it, and it took him 5 minutes to track down a relatively straightforward answer. I use that as evidence to say this thing is too big. And I know that there's been discussions about maybe going at it a different way of piecemealing it. But I know personally, because this is so big, I still have a hard time backing it. Because I'm sure there are unintended consequences that not even Mr. Sadwick can track down and explain to, the person, in the corner of Tewksbury that may be affected by something that nobody knows about. And I understand there's logistics about trying to break that up, but, that was something I raised back in whenever it was, September and October, and I understand there was discussion about it, even within 5 years, but I just kind of throw it out there.
And we've discussed this, and the committee discussed it. If you want to say.
I would just say we took that possible path into consideration, and it was the committee's decision after considering the options that was not going to be as productive as we think the current
It's kind of dangerous to break it up because there's so much interplay within the sections. Because if one section passes now, and then its counterpart doesn't pass, say, at the next town meeting. Because you got to remember, we work under, I would refer to it as sort of archaic, that we technically only have one town meeting every year. We do this second one, and we act like it's a second town meeting, but that's not really what it is. It works out that way. We only meet every 6 months. It's really not how things work today, that you have to wait 6 months to do things. To break this up into that kind of pieces you're talking about could require the bylaw to be passed over years. And, I don't think we can wait years for this. And it's much cleaner as one item. I know it's a lot, but again, after almost closing in on 6 years now, I'm pretty sure we've been over this thing with a fine-tooth comb to the point where,
Gotcha.
It's got to be there at this point, I think.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go to the far side of the room. I like the hustle. Did you see that?
John Stanton, 130 Cardigan. On the fee in lieu of situation, is it going to be based on the federal census again? So if we're, just for an example, if we commit at 10.0001 with the census coming up, does that mean we get 10 years of fee in lieu of, or is it going to be a rolling number as the projects go on?
Go ahead. All right. So just to make this a quick and dirty version of it, under the current zoning bylaw, I guess I'll be a little wise, in saying this, we can pretty much do whatever we want.
Right.
Okay?
Right. I'm talking about the new.
All right, I know. So that gives everybody the baseline. So if you vote this down, we go back to basically being able to do whatever we want to do. Under the new version, no fee in lieu of, period, ever, for any reason. Let me just do it once. For multifamily. So if somebody builds a multifamily development, they are going to have to provide on-site the affordable units, and then they will go towards our 10%. So no, we don't take any money under any circumstance in a multifamily, period, done, defined, absolute, writ. That's it, okay? That's one. Now, for the single family, I guess would be the best way to visualize it. We will not accept, cannot accept, won't be allowed to accept a fee in lieu of if the town is not at or above its 10% requirement to basically fend off the 40B.
But that's based on the federal census, not like a rolling number as we go on.
It doesn't, 10 years. They give it to us.
It'd be a 10-year
That's the number for 10 years that you work with, then it starts over again.
Okay.
In 10 years. So once you hit it, you've hit it.
Yes, but we can hit it within the 10-year period.
Right, no, that's what I'm saying, but once we get to it, once you get to that 10%, you've hit their number, and now there are no forced 40Bs as an option anymore. So in the two kinds of housing that can be built, we cannot, will not, are not going to take a fee if we are not at 10%, in any case.
Okay.
The only option, and would be if you're above the 10% on those single family home developments, it would be allowed. Doesn't mean it'll happen, it just means it would be allowed. But that's only if we're above the 10%. Otherwise, no.
Right, okay.
So for everybody's sort of visual, until you get into the safe zone, there are no fees in lieu of under the new bylaw. Under the old bylaw, sort of free to do whatever.
Crazy, right?
That feel clear?
Could I add a point of, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To put a little more visual aid to it, the Andover North multifamily development that Ms. Randolph referenced, that type of development would never be able to do a fee in lieu of. It is multifamily, it wouldn't be allowed. But if you're familiar with 325 Marshall Street, the Terramore Drive development in South Tewksbury, there's 39 single-family home lot subdivision. That's the kind of project that they would be able to exercise discretion. Doesn't mean they would accept a fee in lieu of. That's the only time they would be allowed to.
After 10%.
After 10%.
After
Yep.
we're at the 10%.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right.
Karen Sleva, 254 North Street. I just had a point of clarification because I wasn't intending on speaking. This Mr. Johnson down at this table, did I hear you correctly that you had said in order to pass the zoning bylaw package that we needed a 2/3 favorable vote?
I may have said that, yes.
Is that correct now, given I thought that Governor Baker...
I know what you're talking about, so we'll do that one too. The decision that we came to, and this actually was in effect at the last town meeting. We took it without trying to pick things out. The entire bylaw as requiring the 2/3 vote, the whole thing, because it would be incredibly messy and unfortunate. There are probably things sprinkled in there that might fall under this. We don't really want to know about that. We're working with the 2/3 vote for the whole thing to pass. In what you described, it would be like, so if 50.1% were in favor of it, that there would be maybe little things in there that could be passed. We're not treating it that way. It's a 2/3 vote.
All or nothing.
All or nothing, pretty much, just like last town meeting, because that rule was actually in effect at last town meeting.
Okay.
It had already passed. So we were working under that at that time as well. So
So
nothing's really changed from last town meeting.
So when does the majority vote come in for what instances?
Multifamily, so actually, we'll get to that in just a few minutes with
Okay.
another hearing that we have for a zoning article, and I'll talk about it. But I wouldn't worry about it for this one, because this is a 2/3 vote, which is where we came up 2 votes short last time. If it was just a majority, we would have shot right past the number, but we need 2/3. All right?
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I'll clarify the rest of that in a few minutes, if that's all right. All right. Anyone else? If you have questions, please come ask them now. We'd rather get it out of the way. I don't mind taking the time. We don't have the time for this kind of thing at town meeting, but I'd be happy to stay here and clarify anything that's still confusing. Not me personally, Mr. Sadwick probably. Clarify anything that's still confusing, but if you have questions, I'd really like to hear them now and help everybody get to hopefully a yes. That would be nice.
Yes, Jessica Randolph, 1484 Andover Street. If you could just clarify for myself and those who might be interested, the rationale to going to, I think it was 60 for the office research versus our current.
Yeah, so everyone has expressed an interest that the office research district should be for commercial use and for office research type facilities. And what we're finding is that in a lot of research facilities, especially in biotech, and that we're seeing that they're looking for increased ceiling heights in order to do their manufacturing and their research. So if this is truly going to be an office research district, which everyone has been telling us for the last couple of years now, that there should be no housing up there and that this should just be for office research, we were advised by our experts that 60 feet works better for those types of organizations that would look for space in the office research district.
So just to fine-tune this a little bit, the ceiling height means that the number of floors is not really changed, it's more the ceiling height?
It's building height in it's building height in its entirety. But again, going back to the proposed bylaw, because that's where your question lies, it is there's no story requirement. It's just maximum height, period. So it could be a one-story, 60-foot high interior that they have, or it could be broken into 4 floors or 2 floors, however that mix works for an office research type facility.
Also, if you can just speak briefly, I understand that a lot of the interest in having it as office research was so that lighting wouldn't stay on too late at night. That is, lights wouldn't be on 24 hours. Is there any kind of limit on how late lights stay on?
That would be picked up during the special permitting process. That becomes a very site-specific. Again, zoning is for the entire district, so it's a little bit more general, but as far as lighting and hours of operation, that would be when there was an actual project before the planning board for a special permit.
So maybe a good example would be Walmart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, technically, I think at this point, I don't know if it's seasonal or not, but they have a 24-hour allowance. I think it's only for part of the year. So obviously their lighting would be on theoretically 24 hours a day for the time that they're allowed to be open those hours. But then, and I think we did it as a seasonal thing. The rest of the time it's cutting off, at a time. And so another business who doesn't need or didn't get approved for 24 hours, then we start to whittle that down into the hours they actually operate. So that's, I think, Mr. Savick's point about, site-specific in terms of who's doing what there.
Right, thank you. Not to be facetious, but if someone, is there a great need for a medicine or of some type and they need to manufacture, 22 hours a day.
So say we had a facility here who was creating COVID vaccines.
Exactly.
They wanted to be rolling 24 hours a day. My guess is we probably would have been like, okay. So that might be an example.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's a race. You get up first, though. I'm going to let Mr. O'Brien go first.
Good chairs over there.
I know.
Now, during the bylaw...
just state your name again, because...
I go, Bob O'Brien, 110 Cardigan Road.
Thank you.
During the bylaw hearings, some were public, some were closed.
Nope. Hold on. We're doing it again. All of our public meetings were
All right,
public
I'll get
meetings.
on my thesaurus,
There were some
okay?
that did not have
Public
audience
input.
comment,
Got it.
but they could be
Okay.
there. All right.
Thank you.
Nothing was done behind closed doors.
You should be an English teacher, but go ahead.
I'm a lawyer, but close enough.
When the 60-foot change was made for OR, was that ever put in any type of minutes? Now, on a closed meeting versus a meeting that allowed resident input?
No closed meetings.
Whatever, a non-participatory meeting. Were there minutes published for all of these events?
Yes, Mr. O'Brien. Every meeting is a public meeting, was posted, and any resident could come and sit and observe the discussion and deliberation. Every meeting had minutes taken, and then as the other Mr. Johnson indicated, there were public input sessions that we invited residents and members of the Tewksbury community to ask their questions or offer their input. In addition, those were taped and televised.
But also note, we also allowed for emailed comments and questions to come in.
Yep. But
More
it's a
specifically-
requirement of the open meeting law, and all these meetings have been posted and minutes have been taken.
More specifically, when this board, this committee, determined that the 60-foot height for an OR, as recommended by an outside consultant, was that done in a
All of the meetings were public meetings and minutes were kept. So if you want to go back and go through the minutes for whenever anything was discussed, you are free to do so if that's what you're asking.
And there's minutes for every one of those?
There's minutes for every single meeting.
Is the February 11th meeting on the website yet? There's one that's, I still see the agenda in there.
I don't know if it's up, but that doesn't mean they weren't meeting minutes.
Okay.
So I'm saying they were meeting minutes no matter what.
Thank you.
Yeah, the meeting minutes exist. They're just not posted on the town website. You can certainly request a copy of the February 2nd minutes.
I can do what?
You can request a copy of any draft minutes. The reason that the ones that you're talking about from the February 2nd meeting of this year haven't been posted yet is because we haven't had a subsequent meeting where they could be approved, where they would end up on the town website. But you can certainly request any meeting minutes that you see are
Okay.
not posted.
So the bylaw committee, is that abolished, or they're still meeting? They have to have another meeting to get that approved to put on the website?
That's correct, and the committee is not abolished.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Mr. Sadwick, because it's being brought up again, just to clarify for everyone, this office research, and, these are the discussions that we had. The office research, we're trying to really condense and take out the things that were bothering everybody, but sort of the trade-off to that is it needs to be what it says it is, which is something that is attractive to being an office research area. The consultants who have no skin in this other than they're experts in what they're experts in, suggesting that that is what the industry is looking for, unless the town wants to make itself non-competitive for those kind of businesses, this is what we need to do. And we're putting such a narrow focus on what can go there that, to change that would really put Tewksbury at a disadvantage against, other communities when office research type companies are looking for space. And from a tax base and all those things, that's not a productive thing for the town. And that's the kind of thing we were looking at, because it felt like we were kind of sneaking around the question of why did we do it? Well, that's why, because that's what we're being told, and that's, our understanding of what will make Tewksbury competitive, and that's what we're focusing on for that area. Is that the other Mr. Johnson? Does that feel right?
I would 100% agree with what you said.
All right, excellent. Sir, once again, just state your name and address so we pick it up again.
Robert Wald, excuse me, at 97 Cardigan Road. In case you don't remember, I was one of the people who...
Just stay by the mic if you would.
I was one of the people who raised a number of objections to the plan that was proposed, zoning change that was proposed a year ago. And I would like to thank you for the work that went into the 5 years before and the work that you've done since then, because the changes, removing the multifamily housing from the office research seems like one of the things that I wanted to see done. And the additional things that were added to the office research seem to me good things also. So I guess I just want to, after having been a pain in the ass for
exercising your citizens' rights.
It wasn't so clear that was well appreciated last time. But in any case, I do thank you for the work that you've done, and look forward to the town meeting. I mean, there are some things that, I want to read more carefully, but overall, I think it's a good effort. And my schedule didn't permit me to participate in those meetings, so I was worried that it was going to come out to be something not all that great. And Mr. Sadwick asked me for what my suggestions were, and a number of them were incorporated, so thank you for that.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? All right, I'll bring it back to the board. Does anybody on the board have any further comments on this article? All right, looks like we're good. So, does anybody have a motion of a recommendation? Oh, I'm sorry, that's right.
Motion to close the public hearing first?
We close them individually, right?
You can.
Yeah.
All right, we'll close them individually, just to be clean. So, do I have a motion to close the public hearing on Article 29?
So moved.
A motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now, as to a recommendation for Article 29, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a clarification, Mr. Sadwick, does it have to be a positive, it has to be an endorsement, or does it have to be a recommendation?
Well, it's...
I just wanted to make sure that it,
Recommend adoption.
It's recommended.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Nope, just wanted to make sure.
So that's the motion. The motion would be either to recommend adoption, recommend indefinite postponement, or recommend no recommendation would be our three options. And included in the recommendation to adopt, if we need the language, to say that includes us granting a positive endorsement of the zoning article, just for language.
Yep.
Belt and suspenders. So does anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion to endorse Article 29 in its entirety as written.
All right, and recommend adoption of Article 29.
29.
All right, so a motion made?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, so we're going to move on to Article 30. This is the map that goes along with the zoning bylaw change. They have to be done separately. It's just a technicality of it. So, Mr. Sadwick, do you want to just...
Real quickly, Chair, I'll just run through that the zoning map is really the implementation component to the zoning article itself. So if the zoning article passes, we would move forward with it. If the zoning article fails, like last year, then we would just withdraw that article. Just for people's understanding, those viewing, what was driving the revisions in the map was, one, to make it match up to what was in the bylaw, like I just stated. Two was to eliminate a number of split zoned lots. So there's a number of lots that have mixed zoning on it, which becomes, again, very confusing for the town, the abutters, and the owners as to what can be done on those. So this cleans that up and removes all of the split zoned parcels in town. It aligns Main Street districts with the master plan. The current zoning bylaw has a commercial district that runs from the Lowell line to the Wilmington line. Everything on Route 38 is treated the same. I think everyone here is aware that Route 38 has some different areas that have distinct neighborhoods that need to be treated differently. That's what the master plan called for, and that's what this zoning map does. And then it reduces the number of overlay districts. We take out 8 overlay districts and are left with 3. So currently we have 11, which again makes it very confusing. We're down to 3 very simple overlay districts. And
Mr. Sad, would you just, the three that remain?
Are the floodplain district, groundwater protection district, and then the interstate overlay district.
All right, so not what, if anybody's kind of envisioning, the kind of overlays that we currently have that deal with approvals from here, that's not the kind that are staying. These deal with other things. So
Correct.
I just want to make sure we understood.
Right, and so I think floodplain and groundwater are pretty self-explanatory, just for people's understanding. The interstate overlay district was created for specific areas in town that have interstate interchanges. So it can only be in the 93 Dascom Road, East Street area, or at, and again, it's an overlay district that needs to be put into place. So it's at that location, it's up off of Route 38 and in Woburn Street. And that's pretty much it as far as the map changes were concerned.
Run around the board. Mr. Duffy, any comments on the map?
No, it looks good.
Mr. Fattaia?
All set, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ryder?
All set, Mr. Chair.
The chair has no comments on the map either. I'll move it up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns on the zoning map that goes along with the zoning bylaw? Seeing none, going once, twice, sold. Bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board on the town, on Article 30?
Make a motion to close public hearing.
All right, motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now, as to a recommendation for Article 30.
Make a motion to approve.
So we have a motion to adopt Article 30, which includes the language that we're giving it a positive endorsement. So we have that motion, and do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right. Moving on to Article 31. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it. Mr. Sadwick, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is
Just, you gotta wait till you get to the mic. Let Mrs. Sagwood clear out and we'll let you in. All right, so just so everybody knows, Article 30 is a citizen's petition. We'll have the proponent of that article sit down in just a moment.
Thank you.
Sir, give me just 1 second before you introduce yourself. You can sit down, but just give me 1 second. So there was a question asked earlier, so this is where I'll clarify it. This article will, in fact, be impacted by that multifamily change that was made, signed off by the governor. The vote for this at town meeting, unlike other zoning matters, or most zoning matters, does not require a 2/3 vote. It simply requires a majority vote. So 50.1 gets it done, all right? As opposed to the zoning article, which needs the 2/3 vote. So just for everybody's clarification, this is what was being asked earlier. This is one of those things that would be impacted by that, all right? All right, sir.
Good evening, everyone, and the board, members, chairman, everyone. My name is Gora Banerjee. I'm the trustee of the Maple Estate Trust, hoping and praying to rezone this. I have 10.5 acres of land.
Do you want to just pull your microphone a little bit closer? I just want to make sure they're picking it up on the recording.
I don't want them to hear it.
No, I want the recording to hear it, because we got to type this up later.
Yeah, make it easier for the recording secretary.
So 10.5 acres of land plus a single-family house on this land. And I have had awful hard luck ever since 1986. All kind of very bad things happened to me and my family. I tried to sell it as is. It's almost forest-like place right now. Two developers offered money. It didn't even cover even half of my cost. For 36 years, I paid mortgages, real estate taxes, numerous lawyer fees. I had to go to the courthouses, various courthouses, for at least 300 times for various reasons, many, many reasons. So anyway, my only way out now and pay off my debts, if I can rezone this property into single-family, freestanding houses, whatever the planning board will allow us to do, we'll do it. Whatever the town folks will allow us to do it, we will never break any law.
Okay. So
I'm a bit confused.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
You're asking, yeah, Mr.
Okay.
Ryder.
Through you, Mr. Chair, your request in this citizen petition is requesting from residential R40 to multifamily.
Correct.
Okay, so your statement that you just said, you'll do whatever for single-family homes. Your request, it already is single-family home zoned.
Yes.
You're looking to put multifamily homes on this parcel.
Yeah, right now it's one house per acre of land.
Correct.
And I would like very much, and pray for it, to have a few more homes, single families, freestanding homes per acre of land.
I'm really confused.
So, all right, so I think the confusion here might be that what you're describing is not the technical terms of what these are. So
Right.
single-family resident, I guess, I guess what you're suggesting, I guess, is something we don't actually have here in Tewksbury, unfortunately, is we don't have smaller lot sizes. There's pretty much single-family, 1 acre, basically a football field.
As is now.
To build a single-family home. We don't have a version for that for single-family on lots any smaller than that. The next option is multifamily. So what you're describing as to what you want to do there is not all that would be allowed in a multifamily district, though. The fact that you'd be able to build standalones, that kind of like we talked about earlier, the design of how you build them, yeah, you could build what you're describing, but you're asking that it be changed to multifamily, which actually allows buildings that have multiple residents within one building.
No.
Well, but what I'm saying is by granting this, or by approving this, that's what happens. There is no limit. If this changes to multifamily, there is no limit that would prohibit you from doing anything than what you just described. You'd be able to do anything up to whatever is allowed in a multifamily zone. So,
Yeah.
there really isn't, we don't really have a mechanism to create what you're talking about. I mean, you can continue to ask for the multifamily change that you're asking for here, but it would be disingenuous to allow you to describe it the way you just did.
No, first of all, I'm very novice at this game.
No, I understand, and I'm not upset with you or anything. I just want to make sure it's clear to everyone. What you just described for what you would do there is maybe what you might say you're going to do there. But this change would allow you to do a lot more. And there's no way for us to limit it to what you're suggesting in here. There's no way to do that. Do you understand what I mean?
So all I am looking for is to get some of my money back and pay all my debts, and only way I can do that if I'm allowed to, or whoever the next owner is, I might have to sell it, to be able to, if we build one house per acre of land, I'll never get any of my money back, and forget about my sufferings for 36 years. So if I can, or someone else, able to build 5 or 6 houses per acre, then...
Right, so the density you're describing, I understand, but that, I don't know how else to explain this, but the multifamily district would allow you to do more than that, and there's nothing for us to do here to limit it to what you're describing. So basically what you're asking here in this article is to change this to multifamily. There isn't really more to say than that then. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So my at the time lawyers wrote that multifamily, so that definition that is not correct then what I'm planning to do.
Well, it is correct in that there is no in-between option in Tewksbury. We don't have small lot zoning here. So your choices are single family, R40, and the MFD, which is multifamily district. We don't have, like other communities have, like an R15 or an R20 or 30. We don't have those options. So you get the 1 acre version or multifamily. We don't have the in-between. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Kind of.
So for your purposes, the article as written is what I guess you're asking for. I'm just saying that when you tell people that you're going to limit it to X number of houses, you could say that, but nothing actually makes that fact, I guess, is what I'm saying. Do you understand?
Do I have to change the language?
You can't. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. This is really your only option for what you can request.
Okay, multifamily then. Okay. But I'm just promising everyone that it won't be condos.
Right, but see, that's what I'm trying to make the comment, because I can't sort of allow you to say it that way, because as you just pointed out, you might sell the property. And if you can't
if I have to,
force the next owner to keep your promise, we have a problem. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's why I can't let you say it like that. All you can say is that you're requesting to change this from residential R40 to multifamily district. That's pretty much what you're at. That's kind of it. The rest of your explanation for why, that's fine. But that part where you're saying about limiting it really can't be in there. Is that all right? Do you understand?
Understand.
Okay. All right. So with that, I'll bring it up to the board. We'll start with Mr. Fattalia.
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So
Mr. Duffy?
Say that again, Vinnie? What were you thinking?
I said I'm all set as far as making any comments on this.
Mr. Duffy, do you have any comments?
I mean, I'm probably a little confused on this.
Stay up by the mic if you would.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think I'm probably a little confused as to, you know, if we were going to be in a position to, you know, to make a recommendation. I wouldn't feel comfortable right this minute making a recommendation on that.
All right, so just for your own clarification, when this is all over, we have to do one of 3 things. We either make a recommendation to adopt, a recommendation to indefinitely postpone, or to make no recommendation. But we're required as part of the public hearing to at least make one of those 3 at this time. So I think the one you would be leaning towards would be the 3rd one for now. Is that okay? All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Fair
Mr.
enough.
Chairman.
No problem. Mr. Ryder?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. To the applicant, I'm sympathetic to your situation. However, however, opening up this can of worms is not something that I, as sitting on this board, wants to do. I think what we're doing here is, and you have the right to bring it to town meeting, but I think allowing this to happen is going to create multiple parcels within town under the new governor's guidelines, a simple majority for a petitioner to bring in a parcel and to ultimately bring in members to vote at town meeting and get a simple majority. Not to say that you're going to do that, but once this happens, you know, we're opening Pandora's box. And by allowing this to happen, and believe me, I'm sympathetic to what you've gone through, and you know, I hate to say this, but I have to. We always have to do our due diligence when we get invested in real estate. And I know that's, you know, in hindsight's 20/20, but, you know, from an individual sitting on this board and as a resident of this town, once we go down this road, it's something that we don't want to look back, because the moment this happens, we will see next town meeting, there is going to be 5 or 6 other parcels. They're going to be citizen petitions to turn it in from R40 into multifamily. And you have, your intentions are great, but as you stated, you potentially could sell this parcel. And the individual that's buying your parcel said, sure, I'm gonna put in single family houses, thank you. But they're gonna come back to this board and they're gonna say, well, it's zoned for multifamily, I wanna put in 15 units. And the location of that within Maple Street and East Street, and that intersection already is a hazard, I don't feel comfortable that I can sit here and support this. So, I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I'll make the same comment as Mr. Ryder. You know, my personal sympathies for your position are separate from what I'm required to, you know, make for a decision sitting on this board. I have to look out for what's in the best interest of the town. And as Mr. Ryder said, I don't think there's anything we can do to stop what you just described. That's going to happen, because the governor's intention in passing this was to make that happen.
Correct.
So it's coming. But that doesn't mean that this board has to, you know, give it a thumbs up necessarily. If we don't think it's in the best interest of the town, then it goes to town meeting, and that's up to town meeting, as this one will be. So, you know, you are certainly free to bring it forward. And regardless of our recommendation today, you'll still be able to go to town meeting with this and, you know, see what town meeting thinks. So don't think just because we make whatever recommendation we make, that's not the final say. Even if we were in favor of it, not in favor of it, and make no recommendation, no matter what we say, you're still going to get your day at town meeting, to make your case. But, you know, we are required to make a recommendation, so, you know, and we need to do that in the best interest of the town. So, all right, so with that, I'll open it up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns?
Good evening. Bob Ferrari, 676 East Street. I live right across from these properties. Over 20 years ago, there was a story of an attempt to put in 1,000 units in this location just before I moved in the area. I was shocked when I found out about that. Thankfully, it did not happen. I just heard Article 29 and Article 30 was supported by the planning board. This flies right in the face of that, so I would be shocked if you folks supported this in any means or any stretch. A couple of other issues. We know that the East Street pumping station across the street from this practically exploded into people's homes 2 days ago. Can't handle more people at the moment. And I believe the land is within Wells Zone Protection 2 of the State Hospital, Wells. It's either 2 or 3, I'm not sure. There's 3 different zones of protection around the State Hospital for the Wells. I'm not sure where those lands lie in. I don't have the map in front of me, but that's something to consider as well in your decision. Again, I do not support this at all, and hopefully you don't either. Thank you.
May I comment on that?
Sure.
First of all,
Stay with the mic, though, if you would.
that's a crazy stuff that I just heard. 1,000 units? I never even dreamed of it.
Well, hold on, though.
That's not what,
But just, because I don't want to get into a back and forth, he's just stating something that he said he heard. Doesn't make it fact, so you don't have to refute it. It's just something he said he heard. People can feel however they feel about his comment, but you don't have to feel like you have to
But
refute it.
I feel very, very much upset. That kind of hearsay or rumors, that's absolutely not true.
Okay, but the truth of it isn't really for us to deal with here. He said he heard
I understand that.
It only has the weight that anybody's willing to give it based on him saying he heard it. Yeah, I can't have you do the back and forth, all right? So, and I don't want you doing the opposite where you start saying, you're wrong. It doesn't matter for our purposes here, that if he has a specific question to you and your plans, fine, then we'll let you comment back and forth. But that's just his feeling on the project, or I mean on the article. We'll just leave it at that. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to go a big back and forth, okay?
One more thing about the sewer line.
Yep.
Okay, my tentative or wishful thinking plan was to go the other way, from Maple Street to Shawshene Street,
Okay.
not to East Street.
Fair enough. That's a valid point. Take that one. Okay. Anyone else with any questions, comments, or concerns? Just state your name and your address, and the floor is yours.
Good evening. Vinnie Allard, 225 Maple Street. So just down the road from your property. Very familiar with the location. Thank you all for taking the time to hear this tonight. But I understand your situation, but hopefully you'll be sympathetic to mine. I have two daughters, 3 and 1. We're right on the corner, less than a quarter mile from that property. And Maple Street over the last, 15, 20 years has become a drag strip. My wife has lived there for 35 years. We bought the home for my in-laws back in 2016, and the amount of cars I see speeding up that road is insane. Adding multifamily to that road, whether it's your intent or not, would absolutely just magnify that by who knows how much. I think what is it potentially zoned for? 7 units per, I think it's like 40 units potentially could go in there hypothetically. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, again, I know it's not your intention, but I completely side with the board and thank them for their consistency in trying to preserve what the town is, and whether it's the signs or the single-family homes or the neighborhood fields or whatever it is that we're trying to preserve here, and being consistent with that, even with all the zoning changes. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Questions, comments, or concerns? Going once, twice. All right, I'll bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to close public hearing.
All right, we made a motion to close. Do we have a second?
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And then as to a recommendation to Article 31, does anybody have a recommendation for Article 31?
Yeah, I have a recommendation not to support.
I'm going to second that.
Okay, so we have a motion, a motion to recommend indefinite
postponement. Correct.
And we have a second for that. Any other motions? All right, I'll make a motion just in the alternative to make no recommendation on this article. It's not up, down either. It just leaves it up to town meeting. And I don't know how anybody feels about that, but I'll make that motion as well.
Yeah, I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
All right, motion made and second. So we have two on the floor.
No recommendation. All right.
If I may, just one concern through you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate, not taking an action on it, but with the governor's new guidelines, we're taking a gamble of, when this comes in and we have 75 people at the at the town meeting. Historically we've seen the numbers are going down, and I hate to see that this is something after we come over 2 large zoning articles and we have a mass exodus and we turn around and there's 30 people left. And I mean, my opinion, I think it's this board's responsibility to, as we stated earlier, that we need to listen to some of the residents and preserve the single-family lots that we have. And I don't think, I don't want to be sitting here in a month saying, well, if we just took that extra step. So that's why I think we should move for indefinite postponement. And I appreciate your...
No, and you know what, I kind of, listened to your comment that it's the part about that we might have to keep doing this going forward. And we are going to have to look at them all individually for that reason. That I think that I'll withdraw my motion. And we'll just go forward with Mr. Ryder's motion for a vote. All right?
I agree.
Okay. So on the table now is a recommendation for indefinite postponement. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, so you have our recommendation. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry,
the board has issued its recommendation to the town meeting for indefinite postponement of the article. All right?
So there will not be any vote?
No, I'll explain it to you. All that means is that we're recommending to town meeting to vote to indefinitely postpone this, which would be to defeat the article, okay? Your article will still go to town meeting, and you'll still get a vote from town meeting, however town meeting wishes to vote. That's just our recommendation to town meeting as to what we think they should do. They can ignore us, as they sometimes do, or they can take our recommendation and vote that way, or it's possible you could withdraw the article. There are a bunch of different things that could happen at town meeting. Our recommendation doesn't change any of that, other than we've made a recommendation to town meeting for what we think they should do. Okay? Does that make sense?
So suppose I win, which is very unlikely.
But if you were to win,
then
our recommendation would mean absolutely nothing. If they approve your article at town meeting, then it will be changed to multifamily, and that'll be that.
Okay.
We'll have no further role in the process. Does that make sense? What you're looking for at this point, if you want this to happen, is you want to win at town meeting. You want town meeting to approve this article.
Right.
Okay? That's your goal. And so it's up to you to convince town meeting to vote that way when you get to town meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right.
So if I win one more time.
Yes, sure.
If I win, then I don't have to come before you again.
I wouldn't say that.
I wanted to clarify that.
You will have to come back and see us when you go to do something.
Yes,
But
planning
you'll
board.
be doing it with the okay of being in a multifamily district, if that's the case, if you win.
Oh, of course.
Yes. And then you'll have to deal with us
Absolutely.
for a whole different set of reasons. But yeah, at that point, but you would have to come back then.
Two things I would like to, as I said before,
that's fine, I don't mind
This is
answering.
totally out of my
Yep.
expertise, very novice. So if I withdraw this article, then I can go ahead and, if I was able to, if I wanted to, build more houses per acre of land, or just one?
No, if you were to withdraw this article, you would remain in the R40 district.
One family.
One house per acre. If you withdraw it and do nothing. If you go to town meeting and your article is defeated, you will still be in the R40 district where you can build one house per acre. The only way you can build more than one house per acre is if you get your article approved at town meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I mean, there's some other thing, but that's generally the answer to the question. Okay?
Okay. One other thing is slightly different. So during at the town meeting, all I need is 50.1% of the vote.
50 and one more vote.
One more
That's
vote.
it.
That's your vote.
Don't.
So just to be clear, we're not supporting the article as presented.
I understand that.
Okay.
All right?
But that doesn't
preclude you from
It's only
going
this
forward.
board.
Okay.
So I will wish you good luck.
Do I say thank you then, or
You
not?
can if you like. It's completely up to you.
No. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Good night.
No, the only thing I wanted to add was that this vote is not binding as to whether you can go to town meeting. I think that was the clarification Mr. Johnson was trying to make, that this vote it's a recommendation.
only.
It does not preclude you from going to town meeting. It doesn't mean that town meeting won't approve it. It just means that they're recommending it not be adopted, that's all. But you can move forward.
All right?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can we take out two?
Yeah, we're going to take 2 minutes, and then we're going to get to the rest of the hearings. Give everybody a chance to exhale. All right? But that does conclude the zoning articles, public hearing portion of our hearing, our meeting.
Steve, I also wanted to point out, there was a last-minute continuation of 85 French Street, so we only have for public hearings. I should have put another.
Yeah, I got that on here.
Earlier this evening, you only mentioned River Road and
Oh, I
Main
missed
Street.
it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't want to cut you off, but yeah, that came in like under the wire this afternoon.
Is that a new agenda? But I didn't see.
Yeah, I put one at everybody's table, I think. I hope I did. Yeah, the only change from
Oh,
the
you know
one
what?
that you.
Maybe I stole
So,
yours.
John-
There's yours, maybe. I scooped
So the
them
only
all.
thing we have left is Highland Road.
Highland View
And
Road,
then
and then the
21,
concept plan at the
22.
end.
Yeah, the
Yep.
concept plan.
And as Dick mentioned, everyone decided to confuse me and do 2212 and 2122.
On you, it's like, whoa, what's going on here? You got the same thing going twice?
Nope.
Everyone, just remember, these things are still on.
Yep. Yeah, that was what confused.
Advil with you?
We are back in session. We're going to move on to agenda item D. And just, again, I guess I missed this earlier, but agenda items E, F, and G are all being continued to our next meeting. So all three of those, if you were here for those, you don't have to stay. Nothing will be done.
Right.
We're only going to deal with 60 Highland View Road, and then the concept review for 2122 Main Street.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, for the record, Matt Hammer with Lamplex Engineering and Surveying, 10 George Street, Lowell. So 60 Highland View, we're going to request a continuance. The engineering department is still reviewing our plans. We didn't go through the effort to submit all the plans to all the planning board members until we got engineering sign-off. So we're working with Kevin Hardiman to get sign-off on the drainage system.
All right, okay. So we've got 7:20. All right, so do we have a motion to continue 60 Highland View Road to 7:20 on
Chair, we have some
4/25?
discussion about 60 Highland View before we go any farther?
He's asking for it to be continued.
Until
so we really shouldn't do-
7:20?
7:20.
7:20, yeah.
All right.
Because there's already,
Oh, I'm sorry, I was
PM.
thinking July.
oh, no, we're not pushing you off that far.
What's the date?
No, I'm sorry. So this is 4:25
Okay,
at 7:20. Sorry.
thank you.
So that's, so do we have a motion to continue 60 Highland View Road to 7:20 on 4/25?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
A motion made and seconded. Mr. Ryder was the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. See you on the 25th. All right, so, moving on to agenda item, let me just go through these because I do. Moving on to agenda item E, which is 160 and 170 River Road. The applicant requests a continuation to 4/25.
Thank you.
So can I have a motion to continue that to 7:10 on 4/25?
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item F, the applicant is, French Street. The applicant is also requested to be moved to our 4/25 meeting, and that would be at 7:15. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion made. Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to agenda item G, 9460 Main Street. The applicant is requested to be continued to our April 25th meeting. That would be at 7:05. Do I have a motion?
So moved, yep.
A motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, that takes care of the public hearings. That returns us now to administrative items continued. And administrative items continued, one is 2122 Main Street Concept Plan Review. Gentlemen?
Good evening, Chairman. For the record, Matt Hammer with Lamplex Engineering and Surveying, 10 George Street, Lowell, Mass. Also here this evening is Mr. Derek Leader. He's the owner of 2122 Main Street. We've been doing some work with the town in terms of vetting out a potential solution to a problem that we've had, that the leaders discovered when they purchased the property, that the construction of the retail building was going to be financially problematic for them. That coupled with the affordable housing component of the townhouses are making this difficult for them to ultimately develop the plan. If they have to develop the plan, they're going to figure out a way to get through that. But what has happened is the Donna's Donuts, which is directly adjacent to this site, is in much need of a parking area. We've spoken with those folks, not me personally, and we've also vetted out a plan with the town of Tewksbury's municipal departments. We've been through a preliminary IDR meeting, and what we're proposing is...
Just grab the handheld mic.
Can everyone see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So what we're proposing is to replace the area where the commercial building was, do a full parking lot here. That parking lot will service Donna's Donuts, which is in need of a parking lot. It'll help with the operations of Donna's Donuts. And what we want to do is then add 3 townhouses to this and make this entire development a mixed-use development by the incorporation of the parking lot to be added on to Donna's Donuts, thus having both properties governed by a special permit. We would then go and modify the existing special permit for 2122 Main Street with this configuration, and then take recommendations that were brought forth from the IDR meeting that pertain to some of the walkways, a little bit on the parking configuration, and some snow storage comments that came up during that meeting. The proposal thus far has been positive from the town, otherwise we wouldn't have come here before you this evening to get your view on this. So we're looking for your input in order for us to then take the next step, which would be to formally go in before the planning board and request a modification and do the engineering necessary in order to make this this project work that we think is going to benefit Donna's Donuts here, which is a small lot, it's tight configuration, and they're in desperate need of a parking lot for their facility.
All right. We'll start Mr. Ryder.
Okay, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Going down the same path that we went with the old police station. Parking lot as a commercial component, not meeting the bylaw. So, by adding a parking lot to an existing commercial building, again, we're gonna go down and create another, well, we did it on this lot, we did it on that lot. The intent of the bylaw is to have a commercial component with the residential units. We went back and forth with the development across the street about having a commercial component with the development. We went through this with Colonial Drive, the development across the street from Colonial Drive. We went through this with the old Wicked Cheesy lot, the corner of Marshall Street. The guideline states a commercial component in a parking lot is not a commercial component. And if the town is supporting that, then I think the planning board needs to have a conversation with the town, because that's not the intent of the bylaw. We went through this back and forth with the old police station. And it's a no for me.
Okay, so I don't know the background of those particular properties, but I think where this may be different is that Donna's Donuts property would be incorporated into the overall special permit.
Is it the same owner? No. I don't, you're skirting the bylaw. It's a no for me. I think we're going down another slippery slope. So I don't think it's the intent of the bylaw. So I'm good.
Mr. Duffy?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't have the benefit of being on the board during those discussions with previous developments, but I know exactly where they are and what you're talking about. And I also know that I see a lot of open glass as I drive down Main Street. I guess I'm just, and I do hear that from residents too. Do we need that? I see the building, beautiful building sitting on the corner of Marshall Street, the new space up by Hafner's, the new space at the corner of Colonial. I don't see a tenant in any of them, not a single one. And I'm not sure about the slippery slope thing. Like if everybody is going to want to say, hey, we don't want the commercial component, is that something that if we did, are we setting some sort of precedent, I guess I would ask on that?
So I think from Mr. Ryder's perspective, he would say yes. If you're asking me, which I think you had just asked me, I don't know, I worry about the slippery slopes sometimes too, but the one thing I do know is that we always, when it's something they have to ask for, we can always make a decision each time. And so to me, if we thought that the one he was pointing out by the old police station didn't work, and if we were to say here that we thought it did, and we had legitimate reasons for that, then I don't see that necessarily as a slippery slope. I see it as a case-by-case decision that the board can make if they want. And the only other thing I would say is the only way this does work is if it is considered a commercial component, because that is still necessary. It's just in this case, this would be the commercial component. So it's not that they wouldn't have, and I'm not saying that this is fact, I'm saying if this goes forward and that's how it's approved, that would be the commercial component. So it would be taking the place of the 2 units that were there previous, but from a definitional perspective, that would be the commercial component. The other side would be the housing component, I think is the best way to describe it.
So the parking lot added for the benefit of Donna's Donuts, that would be considered the commercial component?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you see on the second plan you have, what was there before is the 2 units that were...
Right, the 2 commercial units, yeah. I mean, and this is just my humble opinion here, all I see is 2 more empty buildings there in the future. And to me, 3 more residential units is probably, it seems, where the demand is. It's 3 more Tewksbury residents that that are gonna be able to buy a home, and that would be my feeling on that generally.
All right, thank you, Mr. Duffy. Mr. Fattalia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We went through this a number of times, and my first opinion when I seen it was, where's the commercial component? You have done a number of developments here, Mr. Hammer, and you know there's always been a commercial component with a business with residential, you know, I mean, so that was my first impression. I know Donna's Donuts does need parking, and nothing against you, sir. I know, I mean, we have to look at this as an entire project. So let me ask you, what did the town say, in their opinion, the IDR?
Well, first I went and spoke to the assistant town manager first.
Okay.
To go through this scenario. He thought that there was a window for this in terms of benefiting a business that is tight and constrained in the way that it functions as a business. It was directly adjacent to this property. To incorporate Donna's Donuts into the special permit then combines the 2 properties into an overall special permit. Ultimately, this board is the board that has the final say, and that's what led us to then go to an IDR to look at to see if there was any feedback from the municipal department standpoints, namely fire, engineering, whether this is a viable solution. From an engineering standpoint, it's doable. It's really whether the board wants to take a look at this case to see if there's a net benefit to an adjacent commercial business that would be further expanded, that commercial business, to incorporate this parking lot to alleviate, I guess, some past concerns with the operations of that business on that property. It's tight, they get a drive-through, it's limited parking. My first concern was, how are we going to be opening up Pandora's box with Donna's Donuts as an operating business? The way this was laid out was to leave Donna's Donuts the way it's currently configured and add the parking lot to deal with the overflow congestion that obviously happens in the mornings and I guess on the weekends. And with their direct adjacency, it seems to work. And this is our opportunity to do it. If not, the leaders are going to be forced to develop the property the way that it's permitted, if they choose to do so. But Donna's Donuts will not have a parking lot available.
Well, Mr. Hammond, the other solution would be to sell that particular property or that particular land to Donna's Donuts to do the same function, rather than what Mr. Ryder said, skirting the bylaw. Or what you could do is sell that to Mr. Donna's Donuts and still continue with that project with the special permit, putting a commercial component like you had in there, and reduce the number of units. But I mean, I'm not making things for you to do, but I mean, that's how I see the best scenario for this particular piece of property and the land, you know? So with that said, I mean, where are we with affordable housing components?
It's about 25% at the current levels.
Yeah.
They're waving at me from back there. You got to stay by the mic.
Yeah.
Just so you can pick it up.
So how many, Mr. Hammond, how many units are we talking?
Maybe 4 affordable.
Yeah, and I'm all for that, you know, I mean, we like affordable units, like the. So, Mr. Duffy, what happens here? This is already an approved project, special permit in town, with the commercial component being the jewelry store, correct? Mm-hmm. Right. So that was the original approved plan, which is in place right now. So they want to change that. So, but Mr. Hammer, what I don't see here is a postal delivery location as well. I mean, that's usually part of the plan. You have to add that in somewhere, right? So, but again, I mean, this is not our typical plan, and I'm like I said, I don't want this to be a new design coming into town. I'd like to see the commercial component be incorporated in this rather than being, you know, on the side, in my opinion. So,
Mr. Chairman, could I ask? This seems to me to be a very unique situation with an abutting business that you know, it just seems to at a glance to me to be a pretty good fit. I wonder if you could explain what went on at the old police station lot that has some similarities here.
Well, I'm going to be careful how I say this. I think it was the determination of the board at that time that the suggestion that they were making in order to do a parking, I think the parking was technically going to be to the town, but sort of specifically to the housing authority.
Correct.
That was the limit. And I think, without putting words in any of the board members' mouth, because it wasn't actually something we had to make an official determination on, the feeling in that case was that that was really being done as a way to get around building a commercial unit, but from the perspective of the board, not really giving any benefit to anybody other than the developer for what they wanted to do, and not so much what that commercial component was giving to, I guess, the town would be the best, because we were the ones getting it in that case. Didn't really see the bang for it, I guess. Does that sound right?
I mean, at the end of the day, the RFQ that went out, the RFP that went out for that parcel was that whoever the owner would be was to build a parking lot for the housing authority. That was part of the RFP. So their intent was they were going to put in a guard shack on that parking lot and have that as the commercial component to the development. So,
and I think there's your other thing, and I'm not making the argument for it, just making the statement about it. Sure. Is that that was a piece that was being put out by the town. It had an RFP involved. So the difference from that property potentially to how you look at this one, you could see as different things. You know, how you would evaluate. That's completely up to you, each of us. Sure. But you know, when I was making my comment before about, you know, doing it on a one by one basis, that could be something you might think about if you thought that this was different than that, or any of us thought.
If I may, Mr. Chair, you know, obviously this parcel, when purchased, was bought, you know, with the due diligence that it met a certain requirement to put residential components. It had to have a commercial component. So if an individual, knowing now that if this is something that was going to be allowed, this parcel became that much more valuable. You know what I mean? Where ultimately you're building a parking lot, at best $75,000. And you're gaining 3 additional residential units that you're either going to rent or sell. So you're going to make it on the lease and or sale to Donna's Donuts, and then you're going to turn around and you're going to build 3 additional residential units that you're going to make money on. At the end of the day, this parcel was purchased under the guidelines. You purchase a parcel, it needs to meet the guidelines for residential. It has to have a commercial component. In a commercial component, if you read the guidelines, it doesn't say a parking lot. It doesn't say a guard shack. It says a commercial unit. And that is not a commercial unit. It needs to have a commercial component. I mean,
yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah, no, listen, I read it the same way.
Exactly.
Where we thought this was different.
I mean, and that's the problem. We thought it was different, and the difference is that we're gonna open up another, I mean, and that's what happens. And I mean, and we talk about sitting here at for the last 2 hours talking about zoning, and you know, we're gonna this board gets hammered enough about what gets put in front of us, and to permit this, I mean, it can't happen. And it can't happen while I sit on the board, because that's not the intent of the bylaw. And because that lot becomes that much more valuable to anyone that bought this 6 years ago, 10 years ago, knowing that I could have put a parking lot there, I could have got all residential units if I build a parking lot for the next door.
Mr. Ryder also, I think, may have just brought up an interesting point that we're going to need a clarification on. This is multifamily. It does have an affordable component. My guess is, without making a determination myself, that this is actually only going to require a majority vote
Probably.
to do this, as opposed to the 4/5.
The new guidelines.
Yeah, so just, I mean, that's really just, I guess, for your own benefit. It doesn't really mean anything right now. But I think the voting from when this was originally approved to now may have changed. We'll have to get a clarification on that.
I think you're right, though.
I think I'm right.
And I understand you. I mean, I get you own a parcel, you're trying to develop it, and I get the commercial component. There's an expense to it, but there's also an expense that there's a value to those residential properties. So I think you meet the guidelines, build a commercial component, and then at that point, now you have to make sure you meet the parking for that commercial component. I don't feel comfortable doing this. I think we're walking a very fine line here, and I don't think it's appropriate.
Conservation.
All right, so.
Yeah, another question. I mean, Mr. Duffy, you know, you're new to the board as well, but at every one of these special permits, I usually make it a point to tell the potential developer that, listen, and like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of vacant office space in town, commercial spaces in town. But you know, the residential sells out and rents out, but the commercial space stays vacant, and it's not good for us. But it obviously works for some developers because they have their rentals, and you know, and the commercial is secondary, and it may take a while to get rented, which it does. But they go ahead and do it. But I kind of make it a point to make sure I tell these people, be aware that there's a lot of vacant office space in town, commercial space in town, and hopefully it's worth your investment, you know, so.
That would be wonderful if that was the case. Has anybody from Donna's, obvious, are they really anxious to get additional parking? Like, they're gonna be kind of screwed if.
Right, yeah, because there was originally a plan, and I'm the one that brought it up to change the plans because I didn't want to be known as the guy that put Donna's Donuts out of business by taking away all their parking. So I'm the one that held this up, and I'm the one that, you know, went to the board and came here and had Matt change the plans. So it's all on me. I was thinking of Donna's Donuts, being a small business owner myself.
Isn't that being used or rented now to them?
Correct. And they wanted to lease it in perpetuity to, you know, always be their property for their use.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they need it, there's no question about it. You get on there on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday morning, it's packed.
Right.
You know, and I go there myself, and, you know.
But I just look at this, if this was something that we were going to allow, then why didn't, Donna Donut could have turned around and purchased it and put in a parking lot and 8, 9 units and met the guideline.
So
it's not the guideline.
Right.
I think the answer to that was they couldn't afford to purchase the entire parcel. So
Probably couldn't afford it under the way it sat with the guidelines, having to build a commercial component where they already own a commercial component. If they were to build it with, we know the way the real estate's selling right now, residential is hot, commercial's not. So that parcel just became that much more valuable.
Well, I think their other problem's going to be they're vastly grandfathered for what they've got there, I would guess. So
Sure.
if they tried to do that, they'd also open themselves up to all the non-conformings becoming a problem, I suppose. So I guess that'd be the other reason. Are you all set otherwise?
I'm all set, yeah.
So, you know, I hear everybody, and I understand. I get the point from both sides. And I think Mr. Duffy's point is a good one, which is, and it's Mr. Fatalia's point as well, I guess, is that there are a lot of commercial spaces that are empty. The money's being made in the residential units at these. The only reason most of these commercials are being done is because they're a requirement. You know, they'll do the minimum that's necessary from the commercial standpoint to meet the requirement. And if it stays empty, it's really no great loss to the property owner because the units are footing the bill. Because, you know, and again, as Mr. Duffy pointed out, if residential space opens up in Tewksbury, it's gobbled up immediately, if not before it actually opens up. You know, this site does have affordable units. It's something that keeps being brought up. You know, if this is done, then, you know, what we get for affordables, you know, ticks up a little. And in this case, I can see looking at this differently than the other one because you can see right now today how much the need for that parking is because they're using it as parking right now. So it's not sort of a, you know, an abstract idea. This is in fact in play right now, showing how much it's necessary. But because I like to make sure I'm not carrying anybody's water, I have to also think about the fact that it's Donna's Donuts now. Maybe Donna's Donuts forever, I don't know. But if somewhere down the line, Donna's Donuts decides that they want to open their place down in Florida now, and then they're done here, whatever goes in next, do they need that parking? I mean, I know it'll probably be set up in a way that it'll be theirs to use, but do they need it the way Donna's does? I don't know. Something I got to weigh. You know, or at least, you know, put into my calculation that I just don't know what happens if that changes. You know, I'm not opposed to it. Mr. Ryder, you know, he stated his position is, you know, he feels strongly that he's a no. I don't feel strongly that I'm a no. I don't necessarily feel strongly I'm a yes. I'm still open to the idea. You know, if presented the right way, if when I do all my weights, that I feel like, you know, the benefit to the town through its benefit to, you know, to a local business, you know, helping it to continue to thrive is enough. And then, you know, weighing the affordable units and, you know, those things, then I could see myself getting to a yes. So, I mean, I guess that's the best I can tell you is that I'm not against what you're presenting, you know, at this time. You know, we'll see where we get to if you go forward. Obviously, you're going to have to, if I'm right on this, you're going to have to convince 3 out of 5. So, obviously, Mr. Fowler hasn't been able to weigh in on this yet. So, you know, honestly, I guess you won't know how Mr. Fowler feels unless and until you brought this back, I guess.
Yeah,
which we may
do. We know his voice is pretty important, as
so-
is everyone's on the
right.
board.
So I don't
So we just
know-
need to get a,
So you've got ours so far.
Great.
And, you know, maybe you may get Mr. Fowler's, and then, It's up to you where you want to go from there.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. That moves us to old business. Any old business anybody wishes to discuss? Seeing none. New business. Any new business anyone wishes to discuss? None. We have no correspondence. So that leaves us with adjournment.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would just like to say one thing. I'm very happy to be here working with the board, and I look forward to a very productive term here. I'd like to thank Mr. Delaney for his years of service with the board and to the town of Tewksbury, and I'm just looking forward to working with you all to make Tewksbury a better place.
Welcome, and I would echo your comments on Mr. Delaney as well, as I'm sure all the other board members would. So with that, I'll let you make the motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. We'll see you next time.
All right.